Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's Patrick Christys here on GB News with you 3 till 6. Busy show today. Joe Biden was in Northern Ireland. He's heading to the Republic of Ireland, but there was a big security breach. I'll fill you in on everything that was said there, including the fact that the DUP have rejected everything he's had to say. Also, have you seen this man? The co-chair of the BMA has ordered a load of junior doctors out on strike. Misery for millions of patients. Guess where he is? Well, he's on holiday, isn't he? Classic. You couldn't make this stuff up. In other news as well, we are, of course, going to be talking about this. A Tory peer has accused Suella Braverman, our Home Secretary, of racism. Do you think our Home Secretary is a racist? And finally, Coronation chaos. Harry and Meghan yet to actually bother to tell anyone if they're attending. Is that a bit rude? Should King Charles tell them to sling their hook? All that coming your way and much more with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. Get your emails coming in, gbviews@gbnews.uk. I want to know from you, do you think it's right that the co-chair of the British Medical Association has gone on holiday whilst everyone else is out on strike and patients suffer? Do you think that's right? And also, as well, is our Home Secretary racist? It's in relation to the stuff that she said about British Pakistani grooming gangs. gbviews@gbnews.uk. But right now, it's your headlines with Bethany.
Patrick, thank you. Good afternoon. Here's your latest headlines from the GB newsroom at 3:01. The leader of the DUP, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, says US President Joe Biden's visit to Northern Ireland does not change the political dynamic in the region. The Unionist Party has boycotted power sharing for more than a year over post-Brexit trade. Well, after meeting with the Prime Minister in Belfast, the President made a keynote speech at Ulster University. He highlighted the significance of the Good Friday Agreement and praised the Windsor Framework, saying it addresses the practical realities of Brexit. Mr Biden also stressed the need for a recommittal to peace and the restoration of power sharing at Stormont.
Sometimes, especially when the distance of history, we forget how hard-earned, how astounding that peace was at the moment. It shifted the political gravity in our world. There were no guarantees that the deal on paper would hold. No guarantees that it would be able to deliver the progress we celebrate today. It took long, hard years of work to get to this place. It took a people willing to come together in good faith and to risk boldly for the future.
Meanwhile, police in Northern Ireland have acknowledged a potential major security breach involving President Biden's visit. The PSNI is investigating after a resident reportedly discovered a list of officers' names detailed to the president's protection. Joe Biden's 4-day trip to Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic has seen 300 officers drafted in from the rest of the UK to bolster his security. The Scottish Government is planning to launch a legal challenge against Westminster's decision to veto new gender recognition reforms. Scotland's Social Justice Secretary says the bill was passed by an overwhelming majority in Holyrood, with support from all parties. Shirley Ann Somerville warned the British government's use of Section 35 risks setting a dangerous constitutional precedent over what she said were devolved matters. Rishi Sunak defended the move, saying he has concerns over its impact on women's safety.
It was a decision that we made after taking very careful and considered advice, and we had concerns, as the UK Government Secretary of State set this out at the time, concerns about how Scotland's Gender Recognition Act would interact with reserve powers, about the operation of the Equalities Act, the protection of women elsewhere in the UK as well, and that's why we took the decision to block the GRR, and obviously if there's a court process, we will follow that through.
Doctors' leaders have held talks with the conciliation service ACAS, which says it's well prepared and ready to help in the ongoing pay dispute with the government. Thousands of junior doctors with the British Medical Association in England are walking out for the second in a 4-day strike this week. The BMA said they need help to broker realistic talks after Downing Street refused to negotiate unless they abandon the 35% pay rise demand. The leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey, is urging the government to act fast to end the strikes.
The Conservatives are letting the NHS down and all the millions of patients who need that healthcare. It took them months to get round the table with the nurses, and then there was a solution. They need to get round the table with the junior doctors, and they need to do that today.
The Ministry of Defence says there is a serious level of inaccuracy in allegedly leaked documents which claim UK special forces have operated in Ukraine. Reports suggest that as many as 50 personnel have been deployed alongside other Western forces, although the locations and missions have not been revealed. The MOD is warning the leak of the classified US documents has the potential to spread disinformation. And the cost of childcare in the UK is forcing 1 in 4 parents to either give up their job or drop out of education. A new study by the global children's charity Their World found 74% of parents say they find it difficult to meet childcare costs. It's calling on governments to urgently prioritise spending on early years programmes. You're up to date on GB News. Now it's back to Patrick.
OK, ladies and gentlemen, well, a little bit of breaking news straight off the bat. And here to break it is our royal reporter, Cameron Walker. Cameron, Harry, what's happening?
Yes, Patrick, in the last few moments, Buckingham Palace has released the following statement. It says Buckingham Palace is pleased to confirm the Duke of Sussex will attend the coronation service at Westminster Abbey on the 6th of May. The Duchess of Sussex will remain in California with Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. We know that the day of the coronation is Prince Archie's birthday, so there was some speculation as to whether or not they would bring the two children over to the United Kingdom. And we've been talking about for weeks, haven't we, that there was that hard deadline of beginning of April for Harry and Meghan to confirm whether or not they would be attending the coronation. Of course, there's lots of security concerns, logistical issues, seating plans has been reported in the Mirror this morning, although from my understanding, a lot of what is said in that story is essentially incorrect. But it's now here in black and white. We have confirmation the King's youngest son, Prince Harry, despite having written the memoir Spare, where he's written some pretty damning allegations against the royal family, he will be attending the coronation. His wife, his wife Meghan and the two children will remain in California. Wow. So that news just in the last few minutes.
Well, there we go, ladies and gentlemen. What do you make of this, that breaking news? So Prince Harry is going to attend the coronation. Meghan is going to stay in California. Is this a Meghan Markle snub? GBviews at gbnews.uk. Has Meghan essentially said, no, I don't want any part in this. I'm going to stay away. Do you think that's rude? Or are you actually happy about this? This is going to be an absolute circus one way or the other, whether they did attend, whether they attended together, whether neither of them attended. But now, as Cameron was saying there, this big breaking news is that Buckingham Palace is pleased, I'm reading it now, to confirm that the Duke of Sussex will attend the coronation service at Westminster Abbey on the 6th of May. The Duchess of Sussex will remain in California with Prince Archie and Princess Lily. But Cameron, I know we'll be getting more on this as and when that drips through. That has literally just dropped in the last few seconds. So there we go. Cameron, thank you very, very much. Cameron Walker there, our royal reporter. Look, get your views coming in thick and fast on this, ladies and gents. We're going to be talking about that throughout the course of the show. Big development there. Harry will attend, Meghan will not. Is it a Meghan Markle snub? But now to Joe Biden's trip to Northern Ireland. And the US president has hailed the success of the Good Friday Agreement. Biden met Rishi Sunak for around 45 minutes this morning. A Downing Street spokesperson said the pair discussed the need to restore power sharing in Northern Ireland. Biden then gave a speech at Ulster University where he discussed the progress even, that has been made since 1998.
25 years ago this week, the landmark Belfast Good Friday Agreement was signed. And it wasn't easy. I was a United States Senator at the time, and I worked very closely with my good friend George Mitchell, who will be here, I believe, in a couple days. And there were no guarantees that the deal on paper would hold. No guarantees that it would be able to deliver the progress we celebrate today. It took long, hard years of work to get to this place. It took a people willing to come together in good faith and to risk boldly for the future. Leaders in peace like John Hume and David Trimble and David Irvine and Monica McWilliams and Mary Robinson, etc. They were all people that I got to meet back then. And it took people all across Northern Ireland who made the choice to work for a brighter and a shared future. We forget how hard-earned, how astounding that peace was at the moment. It shifted the political gravity in our world. Literally, it shifted the political gravity. In 1998, it was the longest-running conflict in Europe since the end of World War II. Thousands of families had been affected by the Troubles. Losses were real. The pain was personal. I need not tell many people in this audience. Every person killed in the Troubles left an empty chair at that dining room table and a hole in the heart that was never filled for the ones they lost.
OK, so that's Joe Biden there, the US president. He was in Northern Ireland. He's currently making a move down to the Republic of Ireland. GBNews' political editor, Darren McCaffrey, has been in Belfast for us, is still in Belfast for us. And, Darren, it has been a very, very, very notorious day, hasn't it? Joe Biden has issued a statement calling for power sharing to resume. The DUP have rejected it. There was a security breach. He couldn't get on a helicopter because of bad weather. It's all gone off, Darren.
Yeah, it has, though I think in the end, both Downing Street and the White House will be pretty pleased with this visit in the sense that you're right that unionism and particularly the DUP have said that this change has not changed the dynamic here, the political situation on the ground. However, it was in some ways warmly welcomed by unionists, this sense that Joe Biden seems to be finally listening. He talked about how he needed to listen. He talked about his British heritage as much as his Irish heritage during that speech here at the University of Ulster within the last hour or so, but also that he wasn't going to interfere, that was a judgment call, the restoration installment for the political parties here, and that is something that Jeffrey Donaldson, the DUP leader, particularly touched upon. But in the end, you were right. I mean, frankly, he was here not for a very long period of time, and in the end, nothing will change in that sense that Stormont is not likely to be restored any time soon. But also, President Biden reminding us here, though, during that speech, of just how bad things were in Northern Ireland when he first came back in 1991, how things have changed, and how, in order to change, compromise needs to be made. And I think that is a message he really wanted to hammer home. The weather is just about to turn here in Belfast, but you're right in suggesting it's not been great elsewhere on the island of Ireland. And instead of getting Marine One, the helicopters, down to his next visit, just south of the border, he's having to get on the motorcade and drive.
Yeah, Biden has faced a bit of criticism for spending less than 24 hours in Northern Ireland. Most of that will have been in bed, so not exactly a resounding endorsement for the United Kingdom as a whole. But just talk to me a little bit, Darren, about this security breach we're hearing so much about. What's happened there?
Yeah, it appears that earlier on this morning, a member of the public found a sensitive document here in Belfast, which had the lists of some of the locations that President Biden was attending, the roads that have been closed, though it must be said lots of that was already public knowledge, but slightly more worryingly, the names, numbers and addresses of some police officers. Now, I'm not entirely sure this changed any of the security dynamic for President Biden. At the end of the day, he's got a hell of a lot of Secret Service agents as well as the police protecting him. I don't think anyone was going to get particularly close to him, and there was no actual direct threat towards the president, but there will be concern that this information ended up in the public's hands, given the threat it is posed to the police service here in Northern Ireland. We saw skirmishes in Derry, Londonderry, only a couple of days ago. Quite embarrassing, it must be said. The PSA now have held their hands up and said they're launching an investigation into it, and the only reason they were made aware of it is the man who found it decided to call into a radio station this morning to say that he had this document. So, as I say, it's embarrassing. It's worrying, I think, going forward that these addresses could have been picked up by the kind of wrong characters, if you like, here in Belfast. But all in all, I'm not entirely sure it had any major impact on the president's movements at all today.
Darren, thank you very much. Our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, in Northern Ireland for us. Look, as I said, Joe Biden will have spent a grand total of less than 24 hours in Northern Ireland. Much of that was in bed. And in the past, he's banged on about his Irish roots. He's been branded the most Irish president since JFK. He once said that his great-grandfather left Ireland because of what, quotes, the Brits were doing. And former First Minister of Northern Ireland, Arlene Foster, has said on GB News last night that Biden hates the UK.
He revelled in the fact that he told a story about his mother refusing to sleep in a bed because the late Majesty, the Queen, had slept in the bed. So it goes on and on. He hates the United Kingdom. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I just think the fact that he's coming here won't put any pressure on the Democratic Unionist Party at all. Quite the reverse, actually, because he's seen by so many people as just simply pro-Republican and pro-nationalist.
Well, as you might expect, that comment from Arlene Foster got plenty of attention. Joe Biden's special assistant, Amanda Sloat, said the president's track record shows that he is not anti-British, and this is a topic that we're going to speak about later on in the show. Do you think that Joe Biden hates the UK? Moving on for now, though, if you are just joining us, a reminder of our big breaking news. Prince Harry will attend next month's coronation, but Meghan and their two children will not be there. Is Meghan snubbing the king? GBviews at gbnews.uk. Archie's birthday, Anne says. A 4-year-old would not notice if his birthday wasn't celebrated on the day. It's wonderful news, though, that Duchess Pinocchio isn't coming to spoil the king's day. And there's a lot of this. Keep them coming, people. I'll go to the inbox throughout the course of the show. GBviews at gbnews.uk. But let's go now to the junior doctors' strike, which is into its second day. And the BMA has revoked its permission for doctors to leave the picket line and work at Western General Hospital in Somerset. As we understand it, people were coming out of that hospital and saying to doctors that were on the picket line, junior doctors, look, please come in and help us, OK? We need help in here to care for patients. And now the BMA has revoked its permission for doctors to leave the picket line and work at Western General Hospital in Somerset. GB News viewers can see pictures of striking workers outside the hospital today. Hospital leaders, as I said, asked for doctors to return to work for a limited time to maintain safe patient care. And yesterday, the BMA said 7 junior doctors could return to work to help in the hospital's emergency department. However, a BMA statement today said, we have revoked the derogation granted to Western General Hospital. It has become apparent that both the BMA and NHS England were misled over the level of staffing cover. Either local management were unaware they had sufficient senior cover, or they deliberately misled us. We will be asking NHS England to explore any potential probity issues. We granted a derogation in good faith, and it is incredibly disappointing to see this abused in this way. We are grateful to our consultant and SAS, which is a speciality, colleagues for their hard work providing cover during the strikes. This is going to divide people, OK, because strikes clearly have to have an impact, don't they? They have to have an impact on service, otherwise nothing gets done, and we all understand that. But at the same time, when it comes down to patient care and safety and the health of your loved ones, bear in mind the NHS is already in crisis. I mean, when's it not? But there you go. Is this the kind of thing that there should be power moving on? I wonder what your views will be on that. But now, with this being one of the biggest strikes in NHS history, I would have expected the leader of the Junior Doctors Union at the BMA to either be on the picket line or locked in talks with ministers to negotiate a deal. But no. Dr Rob Lawrenson, co-chair of the BMA Junior Doctors Committee, has gone on holiday. So where is he? That's what I want to know. We're returning to that, but I can tell you where Joe Biden is. He's on his way to Dublin Airport, I believe, at the minute, and we're going to be taking pictures of that. There we go. So that, as I understand it, is Air Force One at Dublin Airport, where Joe Biden will be taking off, or landing even, actually, I should say. And he'll be arriving very, very shortly. So that's the plane there. Now, Joe Biden, of course, has been on this historic visit, initially to mark, I think, the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement and the peace deal there, also in relation, of course, to the Windsor Framework. It was seen as much of a show visit, but also a very, very crucial diplomatic visit. Joe Biden did make a long appeal for power-sharing in Stormont to be reinstated, for them to get their backsides in gear and their heads together and make sure that the people of Northern Ireland felt represented and make sure that they did indeed represent the people of Northern Ireland. The DUP has come out and said, look, this isn't going to change anything. This isn't going to change the way that we feel at all, and we're not in a rush to get back at it. So Joe Biden, his words not having much of an impact. There was a security breach as well that ruffled a few feathers earlier on, and Joe Biden was alerted to the fact, actually, bizarrely, although nothing should shock us these days with the way that the news is, should it, by a chap who called in a Northern Irish radio station to say that he had been handed or seen a dossier which appeared to give the names and addresses and personal information of the police force that was going to be securing the area around him. That was a monumental security breach. Thankfully, it's come to nothing after yesterday's news that there were pipe bombs that were discovered in a park nearby the route where Joe Biden was expected to be passing by. Joe Biden has also courted criticism for spending essentially a matter of hours in Northern Ireland before he goes off to the Republic of Ireland, where he will spend much longer. He has got a track record of not being particularly kind about the British when it comes to Ireland. He does make a big deal out of his Irish heritage, which, as far as I can tell, is in relation to his great-great-great-granddad on his mum's side, who, again, as I understand it, did arrive in America in 1850. So there we go. But, hey, everyone loves to be Irish, don't they, Joe? Everyone loves to be Irish. But that's Air Force One that we are looking at Dublin Airport. And Joe Biden will be going to a banquet later on. And also, as well, I know that I've just kind of poked a little bit of fun at Joe Biden's historic Irish heritage there, but he is going to be visiting his, well, when it gets to this stage, would you call this his ancestral home? I suppose you would, wouldn't you? His ancestral home a little bit later on. So we will be doing it as much of a holiday as well as a diplomatic event, but it is of vital importance. And he said this time yesterday, as he was taking off from Maryland, that his main ambition on this trip was going to be to try to keep the peace. It was going to be to try to keep the peace. A few people said, look, Joe, it's not your place to say this. It's not exactly like it's Israel-Palestine, is it? But any help, I think, will be very much worthwhile. Joe Biden, also, his White House staff, were forced to deny, in response to Arlene Foster of this parish, former leader in Northern Ireland as well, that Joe Biden hates the UK. They denied that. They said, no, Joe Biden absolutely does not hate the UK. I've got a response here from Sinn Féin in response to Joe Biden's plea for more unity and for power sharing to be restored. The deputy leader, Michelle O'Neill, says that today's message from the US leader was, quote, one of hope and opportunity. She said, it's very future-focused. The fact that so many young people were here, and that was at Ulster University, where Joe Biden has just left from, Ulster University. And by the way, can I just say, if you're watching us on TV now, that shows how wet and windy it is. Joe Biden was supposed to be getting on Marine Force One, which was a helicopter, is still a helicopter, and he couldn't do that because of the bad weather, and we just watched the cameraman there have to wipe some rain off the lens because the weather is pretty atrocious at Dublin Airport at the moment. But I'll just return to Michelle O'Neill, who is the deputy leader of Sinn Féin, as the steps come down on Air Force One there, to say Joe Biden's speech was very future-focused. He was speaking directly to them, i.e. young people, and to all political leaders as well, I suppose. And she also said that the US president has sent a clear message to the DUP. For what it's worth, the DUP is saying, well, look, we're not really listening to you, Mr. President, but thank you very much for coming to visit. So Joe Biden, where is he off to now once we see him get off this plane? It was a forced change of transport, and that is due to the weather, which has been plaguing our cameraman as much as anyone else. And the US president is going to be en route to County Louth, where he's going to take a trip to King John's Castle in Carlingford late this afternoon. He's going to do a walkabout in Dundalk this evening as well. So that's where he's going to be off to. Biden didn't apply pressure, though, over power sharing on the DUP. I think there were concerns that Joe Biden would maybe overstep the mark a little bit and actively call for, a return to the power sharing. He did make it clear, look, this is a decision that has to be made by the fair people of Northern Ireland and their political representatives. But I've got a comment here from Sir Geoffrey Donaldson about whether or not the DUP is basically going to listen to Joe Biden's plea. He is the leader of the DUP. And Sir Geoffrey says, essentially, no. What he did say was that the US stands ready to support and help Northern Ireland. That he will continue to encourage investment in Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland will be hoping for a massive boost in investment following on from the Windsor framework, which was signed just a couple of months ago, Rishi Sunak and Ursula von der Leyen from the European Union. And Geoffrey Donaldson went on. He said, I want to ensure that Northern Ireland continues to have access to the whole of the United Kingdom and its internal market, and basically hoping for investment. That breaking news again, which is about the mode of transport that Joe Biden is taking. This is why we're showing you these live shots now from Dublin Airport as the security appear to be gathering around the base there of Air Force One. It's difficult for me to tell exactly who we're looking at there now, but there we go. Joe Biden will no longer travel by helicopter due to bad weather. So he will no longer travel by helicopter to County Louth due to that bad weather. The US president will travel to his first set of engagements in the Republic of Ireland via motorcade, they said. So there we are. Rishi Sunak has also been put in quite a difficult, tricky situation with this Joe Biden visit, because we clearly hold very close to our hearts a special relationship with America, don't we? And I think many people in this country really do. And it is such a valuable asset for us to have that relationship. And we like to feel loved and valued in return, don't we? And certainly that was epitomised more so. Whether you like Trump or you don't like Trump, it was crystal clear that President Trump liked us. And I think that was quite a nice thing for the UK. But Joe Biden, less so. He's had historic comments about how he's Irish and that he doesn't particularly like Britain in a way. He said there was rumours that when he was younger he didn't sleep in a bed because the Queen had slept in that bed, and he didn't like people wearing orange around the house and all of this stuff. OK, so whether or not he actually means any of it or whether it is just the tried and tested way of getting the Irish-American vote, who will know? But Rishi Sunak was put in a tricky situation because the Prime Minister was forced to say that he did not snub Joe Biden by not attending his address at the Ulster University in Belfast this afternoon. Rishi Sunak decided not to go, apparently, because there were other private engagements. So read into that what you will. And he was pressed on this. The spokesperson for the Prime Minister was pressed on this. And he said, actually, the two of them get on really well. They meet each other all the time. The relationship is great. So there we go. One potential criticism as well from Joe Biden from DUP MP Jim Shannon, who, by the way, we are hoping we might be able to speak with live on this show quite soon. Jim Shannon said it would have been better if Joe Biden had come with some encouragement, i.e., have you got any ideas, Mr. President, about how we can get back to power sharing and how we can make sure that there isn't a return to the bad old days before the Good Friday Agreement? Again, I just want to emphasise, if you're watching us now on television or watching us online or however you are digesting GB News, you are watching images of Air Force One at Dublin Airport. I can see some movement at the top of the stairs there. Looks at... we'll wait for confirmation exactly who that is. I can't quite see the head of that individual there. It's just poking out from behind the steps. I believe that is President Joe Biden. It is, yes, walking down the steps of Air Force One at a very wet and windy Dublin Airport. He's meeting with Leo Varadkar there, of course, and and the Irish Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, and Joe Biden. Yes, that's right. Very hard to tell, ladies and gentlemen, because of the amount of brollies on display and the terrible weather there in Dublin. But yes, that is Joe Biden, who's just walked down the steps of Air Force One at Dublin Airport to meet the Irish Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar. He will then, again, unless there is another last-minute change due to this weather, although I don't quite understand how there would be, he's just landed there now, and they are set to get a motorcade from Dublin Airport to go to County Louth, where he will take a trip at King John's Castle in Carlingford late this afternoon, and then a walkabout in Dundalk this evening. And again, rumblings of a banquet as well with various Irish dignitaries. It does appear, doesn't it, really, that Joe Biden is paying more attention to the Republic of Ireland than Northern Ireland, although our very own deputy political editor, I nearly demoted him there, our deputy political editor, Tom Harwood, was talking to me just before I came on air, as we see Joe Biden shaking the hands there of variety of different Irish dignitaries, saying, look, what good could Joe Biden have really done in Northern Ireland, other than the speech that he made at Ulster University, kind of tentatively urging people to get their heads together and make sure that the people are represented by Stormont reforming and coming together? Because he has been so vocal, hasn't he, about his support for the Republic of Ireland, previous perceived wrongs, anyway, from the British government there. And so what good would he have done? Could he have, in fact, actually done more harm than good by lingering in Northern Ireland, potentially stoking a few more tensions? Joe Biden there, flanked by Leo Varadkar, and, of course, a heavy, heavy detail of security there, just discussing, passing the time. He's spending a lot of time out in the rain. I know he's covered up by an umbrella, but it is a bit grim there for him, and he is greeted by people, having a chat with them now before he gets into his motorcade, gets out of the rain and goes to that visit now to County Louth, where he will spend the evening. And we'll bring you all of the latest on this, of course, as and when we get it. I just want to emphasise again, so far today, this trip has gone pretty much without a hitch, although it couldn't be said to have been guaranteed, because on this show yesterday, we broke the news that the police had been alerted to the fact that they'd found some pipe bombs in a park nearby a route that Joe Biden was expected to travel on. That was a concern. The day before that, petrol bombs had been thrown at police officers in Londonderry, and there was a concern that violence would erupt again. Then this morning, we were told, weren't we, that there'd been a security breach, a data breach, and the names and addresses and some operational details of Northern Irish police officers had been leaked. Again, worries that that could have led to them being targeted. That would have really marred the visit, wouldn't it, and played into the hands of people who want to see a breakdown in law and order, that hard-earned law and order and peace in Northern Ireland. That would have played into their hands. And Joe Biden and Rishi Sunak did meet. They reflected on the legacy of the Good Friday Agreement when they had their talks, and we do have some more details for you now of what Joe Biden actually said to Rishi Sunak. That was in Belfast earlier. Apparently, the two leaders reflected on the legacy of the Belfast Agreement, which was signed 25 years ago this week. Supposedly as well, they also agreed that the anniversary is, and I'm quoting now, a moment to celebrate the progress that Northern Ireland has made over the last quarter of a century and to recommit to building an even brighter future for Northern Ireland. The statement went on to say the Prime Minister thanked President Biden for the role the US people and businesses have played in Northern Ireland's prosperity, with billions of pounds of investment creating the tens of thousands of jobs. And what we're watching now is Joe Biden having just come out of the steps of Air Force One at Dublin Airport alongside the Irish Taoiseach, as it looks to me now as he's about to make his way into the motorcade to get out of the wet and the wild there in Dublin and head up to do a few bits and bobs around County Louth. Joe Biden will feel as though he's coming home, won't he? He always talks about this, how he's got these big Irish roots. Supposedly he's got a couple of members of his family who've not been to Ireland before. As we understand it, he's going to go and visit his old familial home. I did poke a little bit of fun at that earlier on, didn't I? To say it will have to be a very old home, because I think it was his great-great-great-grandfather who set sail for America back in around 1850, as we're aware. But, of course, they have got relatives there, lots of them. And if you do trace back his ancestral tree, as Joe Biden is very keen to point out, he is one of the most Irish presidents of all time, with the possible exception of JFK. So he's not in bad company there. But there we go. They always do like to play up the Irish hand, don't they? But to be fair, it does actually apply a bit with Joe Biden, doesn't it? So he's going to be going and doing A diplomatic tour, yes, of course, but also a bit of a sightseeing tour and a bit of a familial history. And I think he will feel a lot more comfortable now he's in the back of that the Beast, it's called, isn't it? The big armoured limousine that the president rides around in Dublin, and away from the potential fracas and hotbed of disruption that could have been Belfast, that could have been his time in Northern Ireland there. I think overall they will be quite happy, all people concerned, that they managed to get off without a hitch. I've just got a little bit more info on you now. So Joe Biden arrived in Dublin. That's what we're looking at now as the motorcade pulls away. He flew in on Air Force One from Belfast. His son Hunter and his sister Valerie Biden-Owen have made the journey with him. So it was difficult to see them there earlier on because of the amount of umbrellas and the bad weather. But yes, his son Hunter Biden and his sister Valerie Biden-Owen have made that trip with him. And from there, he will travel to County Louth. He's expected to visit King John's Castle in Carlingford later this afternoon. And no doubt there will be hordes of people, crowds of people, ready and willing to greet the President of the United States on that visit. The motorcade there has not really got going, to be fair. He's just still sitting in the back of it at Dublin Airport. And again, I want to emphasise that the weather is deemed so bad that he couldn't get the helicopter from that airport over to County Louth. So it will take him a lot longer. Now, whether or not this has much of an impact on his planned trip, I would imagine it would add at least an hour or so to the journey time. So that might have a bearing on what he does later on this evening. But I suppose a plus side of it might mean that we are able to show you more images because this motorcade is going to make that way there. And we will be able, hopefully, to bring some of that with you. Just to tell you as well that there was a massive, massive security issue earlier on, which was that the police's details and the names and addresses of some police officers were leaked and put out into the public domain. But the Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell, who was shot by masked gunmen in Omagh in February, and his attackers as well were thought to be members of the new IRA. They've not been found, but that individual has come out and said enemies of the peace will not prevail. So very much a strong focus here on trying to keep the peace. And that motorcade there, with carrying Joe Biden and a huge number of security officers as well, is now leaving Dublin Airport. He will make his way to County Louth. And I think the, shall we say, nicer element, the more fun element, the less business-like element of Joe Biden's historic trip to Ireland can now begin. The diplomatic side of things, talking about the Windsor Framework, talking about the Good Friday Agreement, talking about the political relationship and indeed the special relationship with Britain, Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland towards America. That's kind of over, really, and he's going to be going and doing a little bit more of a, what do you say, a more ornate version of a state visit. That is Air Force One there on the tarmac. And like I've said, we will be keeping a close eye on President Biden and his movements, and we'll be bringing you the very, very latest on that here on GB News. Right, OK, so it's due to be the biggest event of the year. No, not that. There were just over 3 weeks to go until the Coronation. And here's another bit of breaking news. It's non-stop today. Prince Harry's attendance has only confirmed, by the way, that he will be at Westminster Abbey on May the 6th. And that's been announced today. So that was supposedly quite a while after the deadline for that being announced. But there we go. He's at least bothered to tell us now. But, and this is the big news, is that the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan, is going to remain in California with their 2 children. How do you feel about that? It's actually split the inbox. Whenever we talk about Harry and Meghan here, we always get a barrage of people going, oh, I don't really care about it. But actually, you're all emailing in, aren't you? And I think secretly you quite possibly do. I think possibly what you're trying to tell me is that you don't really care much about them. I've had some cracking emails in about this. I'm so happy Meghan will not be attending. I wouldn't bother if Harry attended or not. However, I'd now love it if Harry just stayed in the UK for good. That's from Jay. And so there's quite a lot of this going on. What do you make of all of this stuff? Because there was a bit of coronation chaos and supposedly some royal aides were saying, well, look, we do need to know to get the seating plan sorted. I'm joined now by Pandora Forsyth, who's the host of the Daily Express's Royal Roundup podcast. Great stuff, Pandora. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, there's big breaking news. It broke in just a few minutes, didn't it, really? Is that Harry will be attending, Meghan will not. What do you make of that? Is it a Meghan Markle snub?
It's not a Meghan Markle snub, I don't think. It's Archie's birthday, which is their children, and they have said they want to put their children first on different occasions in regards to different things, not so much the coronation. But I can imagine that is why Meghan does want to stay at home, is due to Archie's birthday. Obviously, that's not been confirmed. But as you said, this couple do divide people, don't they? Whatever you say about them, you know, you're either in the camp of, oh, I'd love to see them there, or you're the camp of, I'm really not that bothered either way. So I don't think they can really do right from wrong. But Prince Harry is attending. Buckingham Palace have said that they're pleased that he's attending. And it is important to note here that Buckingham Palace did invite them both. So that is important to note.
Well, it is important to note that they were both invited and that Meghan has said no. There was a ready-made excuse there. But with respect, Pandora, they knew when Archie's birthday was. They knew when the coronation was. We all did. Why are we only finding out about it now, after the deadline?
Well, I guess that's their argument when it comes down to privacy, isn't it? It's their life, and they're not senior working royals anymore, and therefore I suppose they are entitled to that private life. That would be their argument. And Prince Harry, who is the King's son, is coming, you know, that is what they'll say, and if that's what they want to say, then that's the headline. That's what it's going to be. So yes, that excuse is on the table. Re the birthday, but I mean, it's a fact. It is Archie's birthday, and they will be in California. And I'm sure that now that this has been confirmed, then hopefully the main purpose of the day is the coronation for the King and the Queen. It's not going to be the focus surrounding Harry and Meghan. So we can, focus on the coronation, and the coronation hopefully only.
Let me play devil's advocate here. Maybe for once, Harry and Meghan have done the right thing. Maybe this is a way of taking the Harry and Meghan circus and the limelight of that off the situation, actually, and just keeping that focus on King Charles, as indeed it should be, on what is going to be an absolutely historic day, not just for Charles, but for the monarchy as a whole and for Great Britain as well. And I wonder whether or not maybe they've done the right thing now by just saying, look, Meghan, you would cause an absolute circus. I've got to ask you, though, Pandora, do you think Harry will get booed?
I think if you go by what the King's events have been like in the past couple of them, he's also received some boos themselves. There have been anti-monarchists and protesters at those events, so I can imagine some of the royal family will get booed. So that's my diplomatic answer, but I'm sure there'll be lots of cheers as well, and I can imagine that the security service will be all over it, and they'll be keeping people at a healthy distance. But yeah, you can imagine it will be all over, obviously, your news channel, but of course, everywhere that day. So you'll be able to see for yourselves whether there's cheers or boos.
Well, we will. And Pandora, seamlessly done, because it is another opportunity for us to plug the fact that GB News will be your home of the coronation. So make sure that you're all locked in on that. Pandora, great stuff. Lovely to see you. Pandora Forsyth there, who's the host of the Daily Express's Royal Roundup podcast. Well, now that we know that Harry is coming and Meghan is not, I do want to know how you feel about this. gbviews@gbnews.uk. But with me now is Di Davies. He's the former head of Royal Protection. And Di, this is a fascinating development. There's quite a lot I want to talk to you about when it comes to the Royal Protection at the moment. But let's just start with that breaking line, which is that Harry will be in attendance. So what's going to happen? Are the police or the usual royal detail going to be protecting him? Is that how it's going to work?
Yes, it's going to be quite an event now because, one, he's late telling everybody that he was coming. That adds to the confusion in terms of planning. But now he has said definitely he's coming, and he's coming on his own. In one sense, it'll make it a lot easier from a security point of view, because undoubtedly the Home Office and the police will now provide him with the security he often so earnestly requires, allegedly, in this country, and I think he will be provided it. What we have to look at,
because he didn't appear to need too much security when he hopped in the back of a London black cab and then walked through a press pack towards a courtroom so that he could try to take our British media to court. But there we go. Look, do you think that one of the reasons why the procession from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Abbey has been shortened might be because they are afraid of protesters and they are afraid of security issues along that route. And what they want to do is try to minimise any risk to the King and Queen. I'm bearing in mind that this breaking news is about Harry. It is important not to forget that the people who this is all supposed to be focused on, the person this is all supposed to be focused on, is King Charles. And do you think that they were trying to shorten his route in order to make sure that there weren't these vile protesters kicking off?
Well, you may or may not be right in terms of why they have shortened it. I think, obviously, the shorter the route, the more you can try and secure it. I mean, if you look at the history, there have been attacks on various members of the royal family going back hundreds of years, as I've explained many times. But this is new. This is going to be a huge operation, not only to protect the King and the Queen Consort, as she's still called, but all members, senior members of the royal family, now Harry as well, but also the huge numbers of visiting VIPs, other royals. Mrs. Bindon is coming. So there's going to be a huge operation. And again, intelligence has come out that these various anarchists, as I call them, these people who think they have the right to disrupt anything in their causes, rightly or wrongly, they certainly, in my view, should be dealt with quickly and succinctly.
Di, how much of an impact will Harry's late notice of attendance actually have made on security provisions, do you think?
I think they would have had a plan either way. I think they would have planned, given the intelligence information, and we don't know what the private conversations have been, but any commander worth his salt would have put the provision in that Harry would be coming. As I now understand, it will be a very short visit. He will not partake in the Sunday, as I understand it, and indeed other events that may take place on the Monday. So I think he'll fly in very quickly, perhaps the day before. I don't know who he will be with, but he'll probably stay either at Frogmore or with his father. In one sense, it puts it to bed, but I think the interest now by certain quarters will be huge. And as you say, your news will cover it all day long.
Di, will it make people's lives easier that Meghan isn't going to come, presumably with the kids as well? She'll be staying back at home in California, won't she? And will that make it easier for the security detail? I can't help but wonder as well, Di, whether it plays into Prince Harry's narrative, though, that his family wouldn't be safe in Britain. He could go, well, they wouldn't be safe. I'll come here, I'll front up to it, I'll walk down. Di, is it going to be easier for the security detail of the royal household to just look after Harry as opposed to Meghan and the kids as well?
Well, yes, but by just sheer definition, one person is easier to protect, arguably, than two. But I think it may well play into that narrative. But, you know, he shoots himself in his own foot so often. As you rightly said, his appearances at the High Court where he didn't have to be there, etc., going around as she did with open windows when they're meant to be protected. He will have that gentleman that you're showing now is a former sergeant in royalty protection, well regarded by his former colleagues and current colleagues, but he will have Scotland Yard who will give him armed protection, as will be as agreed, really. And really, in fairness, there are people out there who don't like him very much, and there are those nutters, and unfortunately, you now have to deal with those nutters who are anarchists. You have to deal with the Northern Ireland lot, the old IRA, as they call it, you know, the latest bunch they call themselves. You know, it is going to be a huge security, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the preparations. The planning has been going on for months and months now, not only with the police, security services, etc., etc.
All right, Di, I tell you what, next time you come on, tell us what you really think, eh? That's Di Davis there, of course, is a former head of Royal Protection. Great stuff, Di. Thank you very, very much for all of that. Good email this from Judith, just quickly. And this is an interesting angle, actually, Judith, so thank you. gbviews@gbnews.uk. I feel this is something where Prince Harry's children later on in life will never forgive him for, and that is the fact that they will now not be coming to the coronation, and it will just be Harry. Meghan will be at home with the kids. It is, of course, Archie's birthday. They're making a big deal out of that. I'm sorry, but if I was, 4, I think he is, 4 years old, if at 4 years old someone had said to me as a birthday present, do you want to go to a king's coronation? I think I'd have been inclined to say yes, actually, but there we go. Get your views coming in thick and fast. Now, do you want to listen, something completely different now, do you want to listen to Elon Musk, the Twitter boss, making mincemeat out of a BBC reporter? Of course you do. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Yes, OK, so this is the big breaking news, ladies and gentlemen, with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News, that Harry and Meghan, well, there is an announcement. Harry will be attending the coronation. Meghan Markle will not be attending the coronation, and she will be staying at home in California with the kids. And, of course, it is Archie's birthday as well. People are saying, is this a snub? A snub by Meghan Markle? Or actually, do you care? Do you think that it's better, really, in the round that Harry comes on his own? In other news, though, I believe I can show you some footage, the latest images of Joe Biden, the President of the United States, who's touched down in Dublin. So he landed at Dublin Airport not so long ago, got off the plane moments ago. That's him now, actually. Let's see if we can listen in.
1970, sitting in his living room with his wife, Dot, Raleigh, we're reading the paper. There was a photograph of a young man in crutches, 16 years old, with braces from under his arm all the way down to his ankles, and 2 steel crutches. And I said, what was it?
What we're listening to now is Joe Biden, the President of the United States, at Dublin Airport, surrounded by children, Leo Varadkar, the Irish tea shop, and emergency service personnel,
I said, I feel foolish.
walking around and talking
They did adopt it.
about his Irish heritage. Let's listen back in.
I went and apologized to Jesse Helm because the idea that I disagreed with everything he said, but to suggest that he was doing it and he didn't care about people with disabilities was wrong. I questioned his motive. Never did that again. That's a long answer to a real quick question. Yes.
Taking questions from people now. Let's listen.
My dog is doing well. His name is Commander. Yeah, what's your dog's name?
A little girl is asking about his dog.
Anyway, guys.
You're supposed to do the ropeaway, Dad.
I'm supposed to do the rope
So there we go. Look, Joe Biden doing a little bit of a meet and greet there with people at Dublin Airport. We can see emergency service vehicles there. He's meeting with emergency service personnel, members of ambulance crews, members of fire crews. The Irish Taoiseach Leo Varadkar is behind him. Joe Biden, by the way, is with his sister and his son Hunter. And let's see if we can just listen back in as well. Just see what he's saying to the people who are in the emergency services at the airport there.
Our operation saved my life. Lightning struck my home, literally all 4 floors, that thick smoke. And then it saved my life, it saved my wife. I wasn't there.
No, it's a little bit muffled, but that's because this is actually a bit of an unscheduled meet and greet. So Joe Biden's not exactly mic'd up and ready for the occasion. And the reason why he's lingering around here so long is because he was supposed to be getting in a helicopter straight away, going to County Louth, and he couldn't do that because of the bad weather. So there you go, the children at the airport there and various emergency services have got a little bit of a treat. They actually get to spend a bit of time with him and meet Joe Biden, who's doing a little tour there of the airport. Right, OK, look, we'll bring you everything that there is to see and know about Joe Biden's visit to now the Republic of Ireland. He's left Northern Ireland throughout the course of this show. But on to a bit of a different story now. It's a funny interview with Elon Musk. So you got Tesla man, of course, and now owns Twitter. He has absolutely owned a BBC reporter. Musk spoke to a chap called James Clayton, bless him, who is the BBC North America technology reporter. Clayton claimed that there's been an increase in hate speech. Bit of context. So Joe Biden's on my mind at the moment, isn't he? Elon Musk was asked by the BBC whether or not they could do an interview with him. It's in relation to him marking the BBC's Twitter pages as government-funded media, right? So that's kind of the context behind this. Anyway, he said yes, and the BBC reporter rocks up. And the BBC reporter tried to say to Elon Musk that there's been a massive increase in hate speech on Twitter since Elon Musk bought the company last year. But Elon Musk was having absolutely none of it. Take it away.
Right. Can you name one example?
I honestly don't use. Honestly, I don't.
Name a single example.
I'll tell you why. Because I don't actually use that for you feed anymore. Because I just don't particularly like it. And actually, a lot of people are quite similar. I only look at my following.
You said you've seen more hateful content, but you can't name a single example. Not even one.
I'm not sure I've used that feed for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And
how did you see the hateful content?
Because I've been using Twitter since you've taken it over for the last 6 months.
Okay, so then you must have at some point seen for you hateful content. I'm asking for one example.
Right.
You can't give us a single one.
And I'm saying...
Then I say, sir, that you don't know what you're talking about.
Really?
Yes, because you can't give me a single example of hateful content, not even one tweet. And yet you claimed that the hateful content was high.
Well...
That's false.
No, what I claimed... What I claimed was... there are many organisations that say that kind of information is on the rise. Now, whether it has on my feed or not, I mean, right, and if you look at something like the Strategic Dialogue Institute in the UK, they will say that. So
look, people will say all sorts of nonsense. I'm literally asking for a single example, and you can't name one.
Yes, not a great look, that was it, for the B. But there we go. Elon Musk absolutely owning a BBC reporter who decided to just turn up and wheel out a load of lazy tropes about Twitter without any evidence whatsoever. And that, frankly, is what you get. But yes, I've got loads more coming your way. The big breaking news is, yes, firstly, Joe Biden's touched down in the Republic of Ireland, but also that Harry will be attending the King's coronation, but Meghan will not. Is this a snub by Meghan Markle? Mixed bag in the inbox. A lot of you saying, well, yeah, absolutely, I prefer Harry to be there on his own. But other people saying, as indeed Judith was earlier on, thank you very much, Judith, will Harry's kids ever actually forgive him for keeping the kids away from what would have been a glorious, glorious occasion? I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, and this is Britain's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope? It's very much so. And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, everybody. Patrick Christys here on GB News. Blink and you will miss it today, ladies and gentlemen. Big breaking news everywhere you look. That first story, Prince Harry will attend the coronation, but Meghan will not. Is it a snub by Meghan Markle? In other big news, Joe Biden has touched down in Dublin. He is still there. He's arrived at Dublin Airport. We'll bring you the latest on his movements and on that historic trip by the President of the United States. And get a load of this. Is our Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, a racist? One Tory peer seems to think so because of her comments over British Pakistani grooming gangs. We'll talk about that in a lot of detail. And residents of a local community in Leeds have taken matters into their own hands amongst a plague of street prostitution. They are shaming men who pull up in cars by taking pictures of them and posting those pictures online. I suppose that's one way to stop the problem, isn't it? Patrick Christys here on GB News. An eclectic mix today, ladies and gents, isn't it? GB Views at gbnews.uk. It's got to be the Harry and Meghan in the inbox, hasn't it? Meghan's not coming to the coronation. Harry is. What do you make of that? Is it a Meghan Markle snub? GB Views at gbnews.uk. Now, though, headlines with Polly.
Patrick, thanks very much indeed. Our top story on GB News today. I can tell you the leader of the DUP, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, says the US President Joe Biden's visit to Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland does not change the political dynamic in the region. The Unionist Party has boycotted power sharing for more than a year over post-Brexit trade. After a meeting with the Prime Minister in Belfast, the President made a keynote speech at Ulster University and he highlighted the importance of the Good Friday Agreement while praising the Windsor Framework, saying it addresses the practical realities of Brexit. Mr Biden stressed the need for a recommittal to peace and the restoration of power sharing at Stormont.
Sometimes, especially when the distance of history, we forget how hard-earned, how astounding that peace was at the moment. It shifted the political gravity in our world. There were no guarantees that the deal on paper would hold. No guarantees that it would be able to deliver the progress we celebrate today. It took long, hard years of work to get to this place. It took a people willing to come together in good faith and to risk boldly for the future.
Meanwhile, police in Northern Ireland have acknowledged a potential major security breach involving President Biden's visit. The PSNI is investigating after a resident reportedly discovered a list of officers' names detailed to the president's protection. Joe Biden's 4-day trip to Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic has seen 300 officers drafted in from the rest of the UK to bolster his security. Now, the Scottish Government is planning to launch a legal challenge against Westminster's decision to veto new gender recognition reforms. Scotland's Social Justice Secretary says the bill was passed by an overwhelming majority in Holyrood, with support from all parties. Shirley Ann Somerville warned the British government's use of Section 35 risked setting dangerous constitutional precedents over what she said were devolved matters. Rishi Sunak defended the move, saying he had concerns over its impact on women's safety.
It was a decision that we made after taking very careful and considered advice, and we had concerns, as the UK Government Secretary of State set this out at the time, concerns about how Scotland's Gender Recognition Act would interact with reserve powers, about the operation of the Equalities Act, the protection of women elsewhere in the UK as well, and that's why we took the decision to block the GRR. And obviously, if there's a court process, we will follow that through.
The Mayor of London has described a legal challenge against the expansion of the ultra-low emission zone in the capital city as costly and misguided. It comes after the High Court ruled a judicial review could take place since questions were raised by 5 councils over the legal basis for the scheme. The ULEZ zone, as it's known, currently covers all areas within the north and south circular roads in the capital. It requires motorists whose vehicles do not meet emission standards to pay £12.50 a day to drive inside the zone. Doctors' leaders have held talks with the conciliation service ACAS, which says it's well prepared and ready to help in the ongoing pay dispute with the government. Thousands of junior doctors with the British Medical Association in England are walking out for the second day of 4 days of strikes this week. The BMA saying they need help to broker realistic talks after Downing Street refused yesterday to negotiate unless doctors abandoned their 35% pay rise demand and called off the strikes. Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey, is urging the government to act fast to end the strikes.
The Conservatives are letting the NHS down and all the millions of patients who need that healthcare. It took them months to get round the table with the nurses, and then there was a solution. They need to get round the table with the junior doctors, and they need to do that today.
The former Health Secretary Matt Hancock is being investigated by Parliament's standards watchdog. It's after he wrote to the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards, Daniel Greenberg, offering more evidence for an inquiry he was conducting into a possible breach of the Code of Conduct. The watchdog will now consider whether Mr Hancock broke the rules by attempting to influence his decision. A spokesman for Mr Hancock has called the investigation a misunderstanding. And as you've been hearing on GB News this afternoon, it's been confirmed in the last hour the Duke of Sussex will attend the coronation of King Charles, his father, but the Duchess of Sussex will not. In a statement, the palace said Meghan Markle will remain in California with Harry and Meghan's children, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. The announcement follows weeks of speculation following the publication of Prince Harry's autobiography, Spare. The King and Queen consort will be crowned in Westminster Abbey on May the 6th. Those are your latest top stories. I'm back in half an hour. See you then.
Right, well, we start with the news that Prince Harry is to attend the King's coronation, but the Duchess of Sussex will not accompany him and will remain in California. That has been confirmed by Buckingham Palace in the past hour. Get your views coming in. I'm asking if you think it's a snub or if you think it's the right thing to do. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Our royal reporter, Cameron Walker, has the details. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, this is ending months of speculation, isn't it? Whether or not Harry or Meghan will indeed attend the coronation. A logistical and security nightmare for both Buckingham Palace and the Home Office that there has been a delay, quite frankly, in Harry and Meghan confirming their attendance, because clearly there's the security implications of them coming over. Then we've got the whole seating plan in Westminster Abbey having to be rearranged or arranged. Only 2,000 people, of course.
That's interesting, by the way.
Abbey.
Sorry, because we're going to be hearing a lot about this over the course of the day. But that is an interesting one, isn't it? Because the seating plan, I wonder where they're going to be sat, Harry and William.
Well, you look back to the Queen's Jubilee in June, and Meghan and Harry were quite conveniently about 5 rows back, and I think at one point one camera angle had Meghan behind a pillar. So perhaps that could be replicated later on next month for the coronation. Prince William, of course, Prince of Wales, heir to the throne, he will very much be front and centre, I think, with the
Now, when you first came on, this had just broken, and it was right at the start of the show, which is convenient, so I do have something to thank Harry for, but there has now been a further update from Archewell, am I right in saying? And just remind people what Archewell is.
So Archewell is Harry and Meghan's kind of charitable arm. It's their company, basically, which looks after their charitable initiatives, but also the press team of Archewell look after Harry and Meghan. So the spokesperson for Harry and Meghan has released a statement which, frankly, is pretty much identical to Buckingham Palace's statement, but have changed who's writing it. So they say the Duke of Sussex will attend the coronation service at Westminster Abbey on the 6th of May. The Duchess of Sussex will remain in California with Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. If you remember back to April 2021, it was Prince Philip's funeral, and Prince Harry came across to the UK alone to attend that very public but family event. The excuse at the time for Meghan not attending was that she was heavily pregnant with Lilibet. So perhaps some might jump to the conclusion that Meghan and Harry are using the convenient excuse of their children to not attend for Meghan not to attend the coronation, because it is Prince Archie's birthday, his 4th birthday, on the day of the coronation.
Now, look, I'm just going to read a couple of emails and get you to react to them if that's all right, Cameron. We've got a lot coming in, actually. It says, the only reason Harry's coming, this is from Sue, the only reason Harry's coming is the threat of losing their titles. They shouldn't have them now anyway, says Sue. And they need the money. So there we go. That's Sue's view. But Linda says, 100% this is a snub. Meghan Markle has made a lot of people very happy, though. Is it a Meghan Markle snub, do you think?
Well, I think there's lots of reasons as to why Meghan may have not decided to turn up to the coronation. I outlined one, the fact that Archie's turning 4. Some people could see it as a snub because clearly there's been a delay in the invitation being accepted, so perhaps there were some negotiations or demands behind the scenes that perhaps haven't been met. Clearly, we're not going to get an answer from Archewell whether or not it is a snub. But the other reason which some people have been speculating, including our GB News presenter Dan Wootton on Twitter earlier today, he was saying that perhaps she's worried that she's going to get an unwelcoming reception from the British crowds lining the route from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Abbey, because we have had the very controversial Netflix series. We've then had Prince Harry's bombshell memoir Spare, where he accused his brother of physically attacking him, also accusing palace staff of leaking negative stories about Harry and Meghan to the press. Buckingham Palace, Kensington Palace denial of it. Haven't said anything about those allegations. Apologies for that. Clearly, there's lots of reasons, and it's just adding to the speculation, isn't it? I think by releasing this statement, Buckingham Palace releasing the statement today, they will be hoping that we're going to be talking about it today, which will leave the spotlight firmly on the King and Queen consorts for the coronation day itself.
It will, and that is an interesting angle, and that is our very own Dan Wootton. Is that right? He said that there's she might be wary of a public reaction.
Yes, I said it slightly more diplomatically than Dan did. I think he said booze.
But on that note, I'm just going to do something that you might not get on normal news channels, which is if you are watching Dan, then get in touch and you can get yourself on the show, OK? Because I would quite like to hear from you live here. You've obviously got strong views. Dan Wootton, of course, will be live on your television screens this evening. I think we all know what's going to be on the agenda, don't we? And rightly so. So, Dan, get yourself in touch. I would love to have a quick sneak preview live here on this show for us, if that's all right. Cameron, look, thank you very, very much. Cameron Walker there, our royal reporter. That is the big breaking news, that Meghan will not be attending the coronation. What do you make of this? The views are coming in thick and fast. Most of them I can't read out, but but it's fair to say there is a rather strong feeling about this. I think there's some truth to this, though, isn't there? That Meghan Markle might not have wanted the public backlash and the reaction from... Bear in mind, it was, of course, already a bit tense, wasn't it, when there was the Queen's passing, and then now we were looking at the fact that there's been the Netflix docu-series, docudrama, some would say. I know there's Prince Harry's book as well, Spare. There's all this reaction to it, and I just wonder whether or not Meghan Markle didn't want the heat from the public. Joining me now, though, is royal broadcaster and historian Michael Cole. Michael, thank you very much. Look, I'll start with you again on this. Is it a snub?
Well, I don't think it's a snub. I think it's perhaps some clever boxing on her part. You know, it's taken them long enough to make up their minds, 4 weeks, to come or not to come. That was very much the question for the troubled prince. And now they have decided to come, or he has, 24 days only before the coronation. And I must say, Patrick, you guys have completely covered the ballpark, but it was on this very programme with you that I predicted precisely this outcome, that Prince Harry would come and that his wife would resist the lure of the limelight and she would stay at home using the cover of Prince, the little boy's 4th birthday, Prince Archie, to there. And you mustn't overlook the fact that only 3 days after the coronation on the 9th of May, Prince Harry is going to be the star witness in a joint action against Mirror Group newspapers for various invasions, illegal invasions, according to him, alleged, into his privacy. So perhaps he had to be in England anyway. But the clever thing will be that the king has played a blinder on this throughout, putting the invitation in their court from the start. They had to make up their mind, leaving them open to the charge of hypocrisy if they did come. After knocking 7 bells out of the royal family for 2 years, they then turn up, or at least one of them turns up for the party, because you know, people haven't enjoyed this. They don't like to see families washing their dirty linen in public, and no doubt, with this in mind, making it easier for his younger son, King Charles has decided that the oath of fealty, of loyalty, which should be sworn by all royal princes present in the Abbey at the coronation, the most important moment of his reign, will only be sworn by Prince William. And we see him there with his brother in perhaps happier times. So Prince Harry will not have to go down on his knees to swear loyalty to his father, and nor, of course, will Prince Andrew, who will also be there. What remains to be seen, Patrick, is what part, if any, Prince Harry will play in the proceedings. Will he, for instance, take part in the procession, which will follow King after he has been crowned and anointed as our new monarch?
Michael, can I just ask you a little bit more about that? And you're going to have to explain this to me a little bit, I'm afraid. So, when they're in the Abbey, there is supposed to be some kind of oath of loyalty, is that right? And it is speculation at the minute, that Harry will not pledge that oath?
Yeah, well, the king has changed the rules. Normally speaking, in every other previous coronation, and there have been 40 of them within the Abbey, the oldest monarch ever is going to be King Charles at 74. What usually happens, all the royal princes who were there were all collectively to go down on one knee and pledge their loyalty to the new monarch, as the new monarch pledges his loyalty to the country, to the church, and to God before he begins his reign. So to simplify it, and the king did say he wanted to simplify and slim things down, he said, no, it's only going to be the direct heir, the heir apparent, the Prince of Wales, Prince William, who's going to have to do this. And that obviates the need for Andrew, for instance, who's under a cloud, and Prince Harry, who has made himself an extremely controversial person in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael, thank you very much. Great stuff, as ever. Michael Cole there, who is royal broadcaster and historian. Thank you as well to Cameron Walker, who's joining me in the studio, and no doubt will be again very soon as we get any developments on it. Yeah, that is our breaking news. Meghan Markle is going to miss the coronation. I've been asking whether or not you think that's a snub, whether or not you think it's a good snub, actually. Did you want her there? I can't help but wonder whether or not, actually, even just Harry's presence is going to overshadow this. Will there be boos ringing out? Will there not? And how King Charles will be feeling about it all. The security detail will have to change can change quick because they are only just getting this information through now that Harry himself will be attending. There were, of course, massive security concerns, mostly whipped up by Harry himself, and not least as well because he did decide to add to the terror threat of this country by saying that he killed 25 members of the Taliban when he was fighting in Afghanistan, which is not the best move at all if you are worried about your national security or personal security for that matter. I've got loads more on this story throughout the show, loads of different angles we can hit up as well. But now, though, to US President Joe Biden, this is the other big breaker for us today, who has arrived in Dublin, where earlier he was greeted on the tarmac at Dublin Airport by Taoiseach Leo Varadkar. We'll be able to see him coming down the stairs there now. This was about an hour ago on this show, Joe Biden coming off at the steps of Air Force One. Biden had, of course, earlier today made a speech in Belfast, so in Northern Ireland, where he's called for the return of power sharing at Stormont. He also backed the Windsor framework and promised big US investment is on the way. So there we go. Rather a lot has happened since the last time I went to our political reporter, Darren McCaffrey, who is in Belfast for us. Darren, thank you very much. I can see it's still raining, but yes, there we go. So Joe Biden is now in Dublin, isn't he? He's promised US investment, he's urged power sharing to get back, and they even managed to overcome a little security breach. It's all gone off.
Yeah, indeed, and he tried to walk this fine line, didn't he, between emphasising that he would love to see power sharing here in Northern Ireland restored, but at the same time telling UNIS effectively that it is up to them, it is their judgment whether Stormont is brought back or not. It was a speech that lasted around 20 minutes or so, quite a lot of nostalgia focusing on the Northern Ireland that was. He first visited here back in 1991 when clearly the height of the Troubles, this was at a very divided city, and he talked about the progress since the Good Friday Agreement, 25 years on, but also that progress cannot be taken for granted, and that is why he was calling on the political parties to look at compromise while praising the Windsor framework. But in the end, according to the DUP today, this is not going to change the political weather here. It's going to remain as grey as it is, in that sense that they are not willing to go back into government because they're not willing to back Rishi Sunak's Windsor deal. Now, in saying that, they did at least have warm words for President Biden when it came to this idea that he wasn't going to interfere that much. But President Biden did dangle a carrot, if you like, Patrick, in suggesting that there could be billions of dollars of investment here in Northern Ireland if there was the restoration of Stormont, if there was political stability, and there is expected to be a trade envoy from the United States to visit the province later on this year. Now, there had been criticism that the visit wasn't long enough. In fact, he spent more time in bed here in Northern Ireland than he did meeting anyone. In fact, his only in public engagement was at the university here. But all in all, I think the White House and Downing Street will be happy with how the visit went, that while, as I say, he was here for the briefest of times, that some of the words may well resonate in the months ahead, but most of the visit will now focus on the rest of Ireland. As you say, he flew on an incredibly short journey from Belfast to Dublin on Air Force One, and this afternoon he's going to travel up, not by helicopter because the weather's too bad, but via car to some of his ancestral roots just south of the border here in Ireland, and meet with fifth cousins who have met him before, actually, because he's visited the island a number of times, but a chance for Joe Biden, the very Irish of Irish-American presidents, to wear his shamrock very proudly on his sleeve, which he must be said he does quite routinely, Patrick.
Good stuff, Darren. Thank you very much. Diplomatic as ever, Darren McCaffrey, our political editor, in Belfast for us. Now, as Darren was saying, Joe Biden's visit to Northern Ireland lasted less than 24 hours. Much of it he spent in bed. And in the past, he's been branded, quotes, the most Irish president since JFK. He once said, and this, can I just say, contradicts some of my own research in this, but there we go. He once said that his great-grandfather left Ireland because of what, quotes, the Brits were doing. My understanding is that that might be great-great-grandfather, but there we go. And former First Minister of Northern Ireland, Arlene Foster, our very own, said on GBNews last night that Joe Biden hates the UK.
He revelled in the fact that he told a story about his mother refusing to sleep in a bed because the late Majesty, the Queen, had slept in the bed. So it goes on and on. He hates the United Kingdom. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I just think the fact that he's coming here won't put any pressure on the Democratic Unionist Party at all, quite the reverse, actually, because he's seen by so many people as just simply pro-Republican and pro-nationalist.
Right, well, in response to that, Joe Biden's special assistant, Amanda Sloat, said the president's track record shows that he is not anti-British, so they've been forced to deny that he hates Britain. But I can now speak with Democratic Unionist MP Jim Shannon, who joins me live. Jim, thank you very much. Does Joe Biden hate the UK?
Well, I think the first thing I must say, to be fair, is he is the President of the United States of America, the greatest country in the whole Western world. So he has a profile, he has a position, and it's one that we recognise. So from that point of view, we do welcome the President of the United States to Northern Ireland, even though it was only for a short time, for a so-called latte moment with our Prime Minister. But we do also recognise that he could perhaps use his influence, and I think he should have used influence. I don't think if he has, I suspect he hasn't, with the Prime Minister, to suggest to him that we need to get the Unionists on board in the framework, winter framework, and the process moving forward. That opportunity was lost, or perhaps maybe that it may have been more than just a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. But at the end of the day, he is the President of the United States, greatest country in the world, the greatest democratic country in the world, and we have to recognise that position. And also the fact, let's be honest, 17 of the United States presidents came from Northern Ireland. Where are we, Northern Ireland, that we live in? So that tells of the influence and the contact historically, culturally, between Northern Ireland and the United States. It's very important for us to continue to have that.
Do you think it was actually a little bit rude of Joe Biden to come to Northern Ireland and spend more time in bed asleep there than he did actually pressing the flesh and trying to do anything diplomatically?
Well, I mean, all I would say is I would like to have used his influence more constructively, and perhaps bending the Prime Minister's ear to find a way forward for unionists to be part of this winter framework, to move forward in a constructive fashion, to ensure that the mandate that we have, which was won at the elections in May of last year, could ensure that we as unionists would see the process as something that we could be part of. At this moment in time, we can't. And the Prime Minister needs to be convinced of that. Perhaps maybe the President could convince him, or could have used that time more constructively to do just that.
Sinn Féin have said that what Joe Biden has done is put pressure on you to get back in Stormont, get the power sharing deal sorted. Sinn Féin are saying the onus is on you now, and that's the way that this looks as a result of Joe Biden's comments.
Well, there's no pressure in the DUP because we've got a mandate that was delivered in May of last year at the elections, a mandate that said that the Northern Ireland Protocol had to be sorted. The winter framework does not sort it. It falls far short of what we wanted. We've told the Prime Minister, we've instructed the Prime Minister, because in the negotiations and talks that we've had, that the constitutional position of Northern Ireland must be cemented within the United Kingdom and not within Europe. The influence of Europe must be diminished, and we must be in the same page as the rest of the United Kingdom. We're not at this time, and we need to have that. So I think the pressure isn't on the DUP. We're sticking by our mandate, we're sticking by our promise to the people, and we will ensure that we don't move. We've asked the Prime Minister to address the constitutional position of Northern Ireland. We've asked the Prime Minister to address the issue of the European Court of Justice. We've asked the Prime Minister to address the issue of the outstanding issues about pets medicine, about the movement of cattle, about all the issues for fishermen. None of those are sorted. We've made those things very, very clear to the Prime Minister. He's a lot to do, and the pressure is on him, not on us.
Just one quick one to finish, Jim, if that's all right. A bit hypothetical, but do you think you'd have rather met President Trump?
He would be a bit of a challenge for me, I think. That'd be the way I would leave it.
Look, Jim, thank you very much, and excuse me being a bit cheeky at the end there. Take care. Jim Shannon, Democratic Unionist MP, reacting, of course, to the fact that President Joe Biden has now left Northern Ireland. He's in Dublin, or he's just leaving Dublin, I believe, but there we go. We'll keep tabs on him. Now, a Tory peer has accused the Home Secretary of racism because of her remarks about Asian grooming gangs, British Pakistani grooming gangs, really, I should say. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today. Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, a reminder of this huge news this afternoon. Breaking news, Meghan will not be attending the King's coronation. Prince Harry will attend next month's ceremony, but the couple's 2 children will not be there. And ask and you shall receive, ladies and gentlemen. I've had it in my ear that Dan Wootton himself is going to be coming on the show a little bit later on to give his views on that. Potentially Meghan swerving some negative public reaction. That's the angle, supposedly. Anyway, there's lots more still to come between now and 5 o'clock. Get this, how a P&O ferry had to be redirected so that migrants crossing the channel could be rescued. What the heck are we paying the French for? What are we paying them for? The French Navy telling our cruise ships to get out of the way so we can... Oh, that's 50-odd million quid well spent, isn't it? Cheers. Anyway, and how locals in what was Britain's first red light district are taking matters into their own hands to shame curb crawlers. Good grief, you would not want to be one of those chaps this morning when your wife sees the pictures in the papers, would you? There we go. Also, as well, ladies and gentlemen, our Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, is she racist because of her comments about British Pakistani grooming gangs? One Tory peer seems to think so. We're going to be having a big chat about that very shortly. But right now, it's your headlines with Polly.
Patrick, thank you. The top story this hour, the leader of the DUP, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, says the US President Joe Biden's visit to Northern Ireland does not change the political dynamic in the region. The Unionist Party has boycotted power sharing for more than a year over post-Brexit trade. After meeting the Prime Minister in Belfast, the President gave a speech at Ulster University highlighting the significance of the Good Friday Agreement and praising the Windsor framework, saying it addressed the practical realities of Brexit. Mr Biden also stressed the need for a recommittal to peace, as well as the restoration of power sharing at Stormont.
Sometimes, especially when the distance of history, we forget how hard-earned, how astounding that peace was at the moment. It shifted the political gravity in our world. There were no guarantees that the deal on paper would hold. No guarantees that it would be able to deliver the progress we celebrate today. It took long, hard years of work to get to this place. It took a people willing to come together in good faith and to risk boldly for the future.
Joe Biden. Well, doctors' leaders have been holding talks with the conciliation service ACAS, which says it's well prepared and ready to help with the ongoing dispute over pay with the government. Thousands of junior doctors with the British Medical Association in England are walking out for the second day today in their 4-day strike this week. The BMA saying there needs to be realistic talks after yesterday Downing Street said it wouldn't be negotiating unless junior doctors abandoned their 35% pay rise demand and called off the strikes. And as you've been hearing, it's been confirmed the Duchess of Sussex will not be attending the coronation of King Charles in May, but the Duke of Sussex will. In a statement, the palace said Meghan Markle will remain in California with children Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. The announcement follows weeks of speculation following the publication of Prince Harry's autobiography called Spare. Those are your latest news headlines. I'm back in half an hour.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
A quick snapshot first of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2460 and €1.1350 euros. The price of gold is £1,612.62 an ounce, and the FTSE at the moment is at 7,823.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Welcome back. Now, Home Secretary Suella Braverman has been accused of using racist rhetoric by a Tory peer. Lady Varsi, the first Asian person to chair the Tory party, criticised the Home Secretary for signalling out British Pakistani men in relation to child sexual abuse cases. Lady Varsi claimed Conservatives cannot use the pigment in their skin as a defence mechanism to say they are not racist. OK, so she's obviously saying that, well, I'll just tell you exactly what she said, actually. Brown people can be racist too. That's exactly what she said. So there we go. So my inference on that was that she's basically called our Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, racist. What do you make of that? Joining me now to discuss this further is anti-racism campaigner and social commentator is Bushra Shea. Bushra, look, great to see you again. I suspect we're not going to agree on this, but tell me where you stand. Do you think that Suella Braverman is a racist?
Suella Braverman being racist? ? However, the language that she's using is incredibly divisive, and certainly has an element of racism and discrimination in it. So I'm going to support Saida Varsi fully, and I champion every single thing that she has said, because for me, what's unsettling is that somebody that comes from an ethnic minority herself is pandering and going right into them, falling into the hands of these xenophobes and these racist individuals in this country that her parents, my parents, this community, when we had bricks thrown in our window, our children were spat at. This is what we are seeing playing out here.
Do you not think, though, that there is an argument to suggest that it was fear of being called racist that actually stopped anything being done about British Pakistani grooming gangs for a very long period of time? And we know that because that was in numerous different inquiries, including one into Yorkshire Police, which said that it was fear of stoking racial tensions that stopped them from talking about it. Sarah Champion, the Labour MP, tried to raise one, didn't she, in Rotherham? And, well, that went conspicuously quiet, didn't it, after there was a pushback there. So is it not language like this now, where people are just being called racist, that has actually got us into this mess because this has allowed the grooming gang issue to spread?
Absolutely not. I think that's totally inaccurate because first we need to understand that the Home Office didn't confirm any of this. There are still reports out there that suggest that the Home Office said that there isn't enough statistical evidence to prove that this is an issue predominantly focused on Pakistani individuals. For me, I'm sorry, Patrick, but I have to say...
Bushra, with absolute respect, how can you say that when we look at Rochdale, Rotherham, we look at Oldham, and you just have to look there at the demographics of the people that have been accused? Telford, I mean, I could go on. I mean, the evidence is there. Are you choosing to bury your head in the sand?
The evidence is there that grooming gangs exist within a community like they do in lots of other ones as well. So what we need to look at is not take away from the fact that we need to focus on the victims. This, for me, is clear distraction tactics. It's dirty politics on behalf of Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman. What they're doing here is they are actually telling us that they have been incompetent. The process hasn't worked. There is not an issue with one particular community in this country when it comes to grooming gangs. That's just not the case.
Are you on slightly shaky ground by saying let's focus on the victims? Because if I do focus on the victims, the overwhelming majority of them are young, vulnerable, working-class white girls, or indeed Sikh or Hindu girls as well. Not overwhelmingly girls of British Pakistani heritage, which would imply that there was actually a racial element when it came to the victims, i.e. that some of the perpetrators thought that those people of different ethnicities were lesser than their own. Is it a bit shaky to start talking to me about let's focus on the victims? Because some would argue that shows, really, the racial division in all of this.
OK, so now we want to go into using the victims to then incite, again, the discrimination against Pakistani groups.
That's not what's happening. No, that's not what's happening at all. You said let's focus on the victims, and that is an element to this which I think does go to further highlight some of the racial issues that Suella Braverman is talking about, and I was intrigued to get your views on that.
We have young girls in this country that are victims of grooming gangs. That's what our focus needs to be. Why we are talking about race, I simply do not understand. This is a political agenda, Patrick. We are speaking about race and group because the Home Secretary has highlighted this is dangerous. This is not the way forward. This is dirty politics. If you want to tackle grooming gangs, we tackle them as a whole. The idea of this country is not to make sure that we're all talking about each other. I am going to preface this actually and say that the Pakistani community, like any other community, supports tackling grooming gangs. We are not sitting here making excuses for Pakistani men that are involved in these cases. What we're saying is this is dangerous language. This is certainly going to cause problems in many, many communities now. And I know that this conversation is happening everywhere. This is just not how we want to go forward in Great Britain.
Can you understand why people might be of the view, and this again is based on reports and inquiries into a few different grooming gang situations, people might be of the mind that it was actually fear of offending the British Pakistani community which led to very little being done about the situation for a very long period of time, and that actually now maybe it is about time that someone came out and spoke about it?
I mean, there's no way to claim that information is factual. What I can say on that is that the fear was that we don't want to divide the communities. The fear isn't that there are too many Pakistani men doing this over other groups. The issue that we have here is the Met Police's process, what the Conservative Party did for grooming gangs. They sat on information for years. So we know that they haven't done anything before. And now they're using this type of language because they are using it as a distraction. What we have to look at here is that it's not just Pakistani men. These are grooming gangs perpetrated. The issue is the victims. We need to protect those victims. That's it.
Look, I understand what you're saying. I do just want to emphasise the Independent Office for Police Conduct did uphold 6 complaints against South Yorkshire Police, and South Yorkshire Police themselves did say that they were worried of stoking racial tensions which contributed to the fact the grooming gang situation was happening. So now Suella Braverman coming out and saying, look, she did put a spotlight on the British Pakistani community, but people might say, well, I suppose that spotlight was deliberately taken off it for a period of time. Bushra, I do appreciate what you've said. I do appreciate you coming on, as ever. It is great to chat to you, and I hope we talk about things very, very soon. Hopefully on a slightly lighter note, though, it must be said. Bushra Sheikh there. All right, take care. Bushra Sheikh there, social commentator and anti-racism campaigner. Right, OK, so we've reached out to the Home Office, and they sent the following statement. This is in relation to Baroness Varzi, Tory peer, saying, look, essentially, that she thought that the Home Secretary was racist. So the Home Secretary has been clear that all despicable child abusers must be brought to justice, and she will not shy away from telling hard truths, particularly when it comes to the grooming of young women and girls in Britain's towns who have been failed by authorities for decades. As the Home Secretary has said, the vast majority of British Pakistanis are law-abiding, upstanding citizens, but independent reports were unequivocal that in towns like Rochdale, Rotherham and Telford, cultural sensitivities have meant thousands of young girls were abused under the noses of councils and police. That is the Home Office statement there, and, yeah, there we go. OK, right, so, moving on. Furious locals at what was Britain's first legal red light district, I mean, this is a shift in tone, isn't it, are now taking action into their own hands by shaming curb crawlers who were still roaming the neighbourhood. The area in Holbeck in Leeds saw police no longer making arrests or issuing cautions after 7 p.m. for loitering or curb-crawling offences. But the experiment has now been scrapped and residents living there claim they've been abandoned by authorities. Joining me now is the chair of the Holbeck Neighbourhood Forum. It's Dennis Kitchen. Dennis, thank you very much. Can you just describe to me what's going on where you are, please?
Well, it's happened the last few weeks. Apparently, there's been a complaint about what we've been doing in the area, which is naming and shaming kind of curb crawlers and putting on a punter of the week type of description to people who are coming in the area looking for prostitutes and sometimes kind of misinterpreting some of the women who are walking about doing the normal work in Holbeck, kind of shopping and such like. And these men coming in the cars have approached women who are not prostitutes, and kind of to get them to kind of involve themselves with the men. So it's a problem that's been ongoing for a long while and still continuing.
But look, Dennis, I can imagine if I was you, I'd feel very strongly about this. And I'm reading now, angry locals in what was Britain's first legal red light zone. Apparently, you're naming and shaming curb crawlers. Is that right? How are you doing that?
That's what's happening. On the website and on the internet, kind of cars that are coming in the area, seeing them coming in on a regular basis, and getting the number plates and just trying to name the drivers.
Well, Dennis, I mean, look, this will be bad news for men and their wives as well. Clearly, I would imagine a lot of people have woken up this morning to some very, very bad news on their doorstep. All I would say, Dennis, is there a slight risk that, someone might be driving somebody else's car or something and their number plate is checked and they're popped up and then they have a very angry wife when they wake up in the morning and it wasn't actually them, Dennis, who's been curb crawling?
That's quite possible, but then we do try and make sure that the cars are seen regularly, and from the way they're driving around, we've got some interpretation of how it works. So it's not just a car that comes into the area. We suddenly take an idea that it might be looking for a woman. It's cars that are regularly in the area and actually cruising around at midnight and beyond. In times when normal drivers will be at home with their families.
We absolutely. And Dennis, I understand you have a pretty good idea of the regular users here because you actually have a Punter of the Week award, don't you?
Well, yeah, that's on this tongue-in-cheek to some degree, because obviously what we're trying to do is dissuade people from coming to the area looking for women to in prostitution. And over the years, Leeds City Council have been trying to say that it's a city of looking for women, looking after women and looking after girls. But in actual fact, in our area, the looking after girls and women is not the reality of the area. People are coming in the area looking for women of ill repute, if you like, and sometimes mixing them up with people who are ordinary women doing the everyday kind of shopping and living in the area. And it's causing a lot of embarrassment in that respect. So it's trying to dissuade these men from coming into the area at all.
And Dennis, look, you and I have been talking a bit tongue-in-cheek there about some of the innovative ways in which you guys have been doing. But there is a serious point to this, though, Dennis, isn't there? There is a serious point to this. There's a few, actually. Look, it can't be nice for you to live in that area. I don't imagine it's doing the house prices any good. As you've said as well, women and girls may be walking home from the pub or from a night out, probably getting solicited left, right and centre. That's not great. But also, the poor girls who are, out there of an evening, I would imagine that they are massively at risk, and it's a shame that many of them might feel forced into this line of work, as it were. And I suppose you want to make sure that they're safe as well, do you really?
Exactly. A lot of criticism that we've been having is that we're kind of against the women who are working, the prostitutes. That is not the case, because obviously these women are there through circumstance quite often that there's not of their choice, and they're there not simply because to kind of earn whatever they can, and especially this current climate, earning what they can. I mean, one instance the other day about the opposite side of things, one of our residents, who was a local kind of well-goer at the club, Holbeck Working Men's Club. He was in his car going towards the bookies to get some money. They'd won some money at the bookies. Left his car, came back to his car, and as he was getting in the car, a girl got in at the side of him, one of these prostitutes, and put a knife to his throat and asked him for his money. And this man was in his late 70s. And this is the kind of thing that's happening in this area. So it is an ongoing difficulty and problem.
Yeah, it's a problem all round, isn't it? Look, Dennis, thank you very much for coming on. It's been great to chat to you, and I found it very enlightening, I must say. That is Dennis Kitchen there, who's the chair of the Holbeck Neighbourhood Forum. And, yes, well, there we go. What do you make of that, ladies and gentlemen? Holbeck, of course, is a renowned hotbed. It's a red light area. It was, for all intents and purposes, legal there for a while, no longer, and clearly the residents are now, if you're just joining us, taking the... rather innovative step of naming and shaming drivers who pull up. So if you're in the Holbeck area and you are interested, I would strongly dissuade you from doing that, mainly because you might find yourself online at some point soon. But there we go. Right, now, very different story indeed, actually. We know that the UK military has been training Ukraine soldiers, but are British elite forces now actually fighting alongside Ukrainian soldiers? People had a suspicion about this for a while, didn't they? I'll tell you why it's turned out that they actually might be. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, and this is Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Now, listen to this. A cross-channel ferry was made to divert by a French warship on Easter Sunday, of all days, on Easter Sunday, so it could accompany 90 migrants to Britain. In a message to the P&O ship, the French warship's officer said they were about to start an operation with two small migrant craft, ordering the ferry into a dangerous swerve of its course. Despite being a French ship, rather than taking them back to the port they left from, the ship escorted the migrants straight to the British border authorities. OK, look, inconvenient for the people on the cruise ship, I must say, but also, what the flipping heck are we paying the French for? I mean, to shed some more light on this now, I am joined by former Chief Immigration Officer at UK Border Force, Kevin Saunders. Kevin, so we're giving the French tens of millions of pounds to call cruise ships with passengers on to say, can you get out the way because we're bringing 90 migrants your way?
Yeah, good afternoon, Patrick. Yes, it's a bit of a funny story, isn't it? I think we need to look a little bit at the background. These illegal migrants had come off the French coast towards Gravelines, which is near Kirk, so it was a really dodgy bit of French coast they'd come off. It was foggy, and they were spotted by a French warship. Now, the big problem here is that the French will only intercept and take them back to France if the migrants say they are in difficulty. The law of the sea is interpreted differently by the French to the way we interpret it. So that's why they didn't escort them back to the French coast. So they shadowed them coming across the channel. They spotted the P&O ferry and asked it to change course because they were worried that the P&O ferry might run these illegal migrants down. So there you are.
Look, I just think, Kevin, could the argument not be made, Kevin, that for all of the money that we are paying the French, it's in excess of 100 million now, plus we've got border security officers on French beaches, plus we're supposed to be paying for them to have additional defences put up. For that amount of money, could they have not looked at this situation and gone, you know what, we're towing this lot back to France. We're not going to make a cruise ship full of people divert, and we're not then going to lead them directly into British waters.
Well, the judgment is that of the captain of the warship. What I would like to see, and which I think that we ought to make public, is the communications between the French monitoring post at Cap Gris-Nez and the French warship. I want to know what was actually said to the captain. So this is difficult. Now, we have UK people in that control centre, so I wouldn't have thought it'd been difficult to get the tapes and see what was actually said.
Kevin,
But
I
I've
like
been
you.
saying for
I like
years-
you. I'm glad that you want to see, like me. We want to see the audio. We need some accountability of all of this stuff, because I think people are rightly saying, look, what on earth is the point of giving the French any money for this stuff when you're presented with a situation like this, and it's all down to the captain of one French warship who can just go, you know what, keep your money. We're dragging them your way anyway. Look, Kevin, thank you very much, my good man. Kevin Saunders there, former chief immigration officer at UK Border Force, reacting to that story that, well, yes, 90 migrants supposedly were just escorted into British waters by a French warship, meaning that a ferry full of passengers had to swerve out of the way. Now, a reminder of this afternoon's huge breaking news that Prince Harry will attend the coronation ceremony, but Meghan Markle will not. Is Meghan snubbing our king? I'm going to be joined by our very own Dan Wootton on this, the man himself. Yes, ask and you shall receive. I've put a plea out for Wootton to get in touch. He has done. He's going to be coming your way in a matter of moments. He's got a theory as to the real reason why Meghan won't be coming. Patrick Christys on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope? It's very much so. And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good evening, everybody. It's Patrick Christys here on GB News. I've got a massive hour coming your way. So, top story for us, Prince Harry will attend the coronation. That would be a story, wouldn't it? Prince Harry will attend the coronation. Meghan Markle will not. I've got our very own Dan Wootton on this. He has got a theory to the real reason why Meghan Markle is not attending the coronation. In other news, yes, we're on Joe Biden watch. He's touched down now in the Republic of Ireland. Nigel Farage is going to be joining me live to talk about whether or not Joe Biden actually hates the UK. Arlene Foster seems to think so. In other news as well, now this is a controversial one, OK? So a mum called the police and reported her own son to them for murder. Would you shop your own kid? Here's a clip of the audio of that police call.
Police emergency, what's your location?
Hi, I'm Froome.
Okay, what's happening?
My son's killed someone.
Yeah, look, would you make that difficult decision yourself? Do you think you could? And finally as well, Sulla Braverman, our Home Secretary, has been accused of racism for her comments over British Pakistani grooming gangs. Do you think that's fair, or do you think that's absolutely bang out of order? I'm Patrick Christys on GB News. Well, loads to talk about there, isn't there? GB Views at gbnews.uk. Do you think our Home Secretary is racist for calling out the reality of the grooming gang situation? What do you make, as well, of the fact that Meghan Markle will not be attending the coronation? Like I've said, Dan Wootton's coming your way in a second. He's got his own views on this. He's got a little theory, and I think there might be some truth to it. GB Views at gbnews.uk. But now it's your headlines with Polly.
Patrick, thanks very much, and good evening to you. The leader of the DUP, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, says the US president's visit to Northern Ireland doesn't change the political dynamic in the region. The Unionist Party has boycotted power sharing for more than a year over post-Brexit trade. After meeting the Prime Minister in Belfast, the President gave a speech at Ulster University, highlighting the significance of the Good Friday Agreement and praising the Windsor Framework, saying it addressed the practical realities of Brexit. Joe Biden stressed the need now for a recommittal to peace, as well as the restoration of power sharing at Stormont.
Sometimes, especially when the distance of history, we forget how hard-earned, how astounding that peace was at the moment. It shifted the political gravity in our world. There were no guarantees that the deal on paper would hold. No guarantees that it would be able to deliver the progress we celebrate today. It took long, hard years of work to get to this place. It took a people willing to come together in good faith and to risk boldly for the future.
The Scottish Government is planning to launch a legal challenge against Westminster's decision to veto new gender recognition reforms. Scotland's Social Justice Secretary says the bill was passed by an overwhelming majority in Holyrood with support from all parties. Shirley Ann Somerville warned the British government's use of Section 35 risked setting a dangerous constitutional precedent over what she said were devolved matters. Rishi Sunak has defended the move, saying he has concerns over its impact on women's safety.
It was a decision that we made after taking very careful and considered advice, and we had concerns, as the UK Government Secretary of State set this out at the time, concerns about how Scotland's Gender Recognition Act would interact with reserve powers, about the operation of the Equalities Act, the protection of women elsewhere in the UK as well, and that's why we took the decision to block the GRR, and obviously if there's a court process, we will follow that through.
The Mayor of London has described a legal challenge against the expansion of the so-called ultra-low emission zone in the capital as costly and misguided. It comes after the High Court ruled a judicial review could take place since questions were raised by 5 London councils over the legal basis for the scheme. The ULEZ zone currently covers all areas within the north and south circular roads. It requires motorists whose vehicles don't meet emission standards to pay £12.50 a day to drive inside that zone. Now, the BMA has formally asked the government now to enter talks facilitated by the conciliation service ACAS to help end the junior doctors' pay dispute. It comes after thousands of junior doctors in England walked out for the second of 4 days of industrial action. Downing Street have refused to negotiate unless the BMA abandons demands for a 35% pay rise. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, is urging the government to step in.
I don't think 35% is affordable, but I do think that the role of government is to get in the room, around the table, and to negotiate a settlement. And for very many people whose operations are going to be cancelled, that's exactly what they want the government to do. So yes, I think 35% is unaffordable, but that's not an excuse to sit on your hands and do nothing. That's a reason to get in the room and negotiate, and that's what the government should be doing.
The former Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, is being investigated by Parliament's Standards Watchdog. It's after he wrote to the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards, Daniel Greenberg, offering more evidence for an inquiry he was conducting into a possible breach of the Code of Conduct. The watchdog will now consider whether Mr Hancock broke the rules by attempting to influence his decision. A spokesman for Mr Hancock has called the investigation a misunderstanding. As you've been hearing, it's been confirmed the Duchess of Sussex won't be attending the coronation of King Charles in May, but the Duke of Sussex will. In a statement, the palace said Meghan Markle will remain in California with Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. The announcement follows weeks of speculation following the publication of Prince Harry's autobiography, Spare. Heavy rain and 70-mile-an-hour gusts are forecast for today as Storm Noah, as it's called, sweeps in across the UK. The Met Office is saying there's a chance of heavy outbreaks of rain and thunder across south-east England this evening. Forecasters are also saying short-term power cuts are likely, as well as travel disruption. You're with GB News. More news as it happens. Now back to Patrick.
Good evening. Now, we start with the news that Prince Harry is not going to attend the King's coronation, but, is going to attend the King's coronation, but the Duchess of Sussex will not accompany him and will remain in California. That's been confirmed by Buckingham Palace in the last couple of hours. My brilliant colleague Dan Wootton will be with me very, very shortly to give his hot take on that story. But first, our royal reporter, Cameron Walker, who hopefully gets the order of people who are attending and are not attending right, because I've managed to get it wrong twice on the spin now. Go on, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, this is ending months of speculation, isn't it, Patrick? And it's frankly ending the headache for both Buckingham Palace and the Home Office when it comes to the security arrangements for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, which will take some doing, and the widely reported seating plan problems in Westminster Abbey. Clearly, Prince Harry has been very controversial over the last few months. We've had this bombshell memoir, Spare, where he accuses his brother of physically attacking him and accuses Palace staff of essentially leaking a story to the press. Buckingham Palace, Kensington Palace have not responded to those claims. And then Meghan, of course, criticised the royal family during the Netflix documentary series that they put out, and in the Oprah Winfrey interview too. So perhaps some people are basically saying it's hardly surprising that perhaps Meghan is not going to be attending. Harry is, but of course it's Prince Archie's birthday, their son, on the day of the coronation. So perhaps Meghan is using her children as an excuse to stay out of the limelight and perhaps not attend. OK, so those are the noises coming out of both the royal family and Archewell as well, aren't they? Yeah, Archewell and Buckingham Palace released pretty much identical statements, very short statements, which basically says the Duke of Sussex will attend the coronation service at Westminster Abbey. Duchess will remain in California with her two children, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. Good stuff. Look, Cameron, thank you very much, as ever. Cameron Walker there, our royal reporter. Now, I'm very pleased to say that my fantastic colleague, Dan Wootton, is joining me. Dan, great stuff. Look, I know that you've got a theory on this. Is it right for me to say that you think that Meghan might be trying to avoid some inevitable backlash? What's going on?
Of course, she doesn't want to be booed. And the reality is, if she had attended the coronation, she would have been booed. The British public were going to boo her. And Meghan knew that. And she didn't want to put herself through that. Mark my words, Patrick, if Meghan thought there was any way she could attend the coronation and be welcomed with rapturous applause by the British public, she would be here, because she knows that her career hinges on a proximity to the royal family. That's how she gets those big bucks deals with the likes of Netflix and Spotify. But Meghan couldn't take the risk given the way that the British public feel about her. You'll remember Harry was here a couple of weeks ago to test the waters in his court case against Associated Newspapers. There was absolutely no need for him to turn up, but he was wanting to see what sort of reaction he would get if the protesters would turn up. And I think what the Sussex has quickly realised is that Meghan is the real lightning rod for some of that dislike amongst members of the public. At the same time, this is going to be a very quick in and out trip. But don't believe, Patrick, that odd little bloke, Omid Scobie. You know, he's the propaganda merchant who just likes to parrot whatever Harry and Meghan are telling him on a particular day. And he's trying to say, oh, this is all down to Archie's birthday party. Absolute rubbish. If Meghan could be here, she would be here, but she knows that she would not be welcome. I'm also told, Patrick, you might be interested to know that there is a great deal of relief from the royal palaces, particularly the Prince and Princess of Wales. Kate in particular didn't fancy the idea of having to go face to face with her sister-in-law.
So that's your inside scoop there, Dan, that actually this is a massive, massive relief, and that particularly Kate, very happy that Meghan won't be attending. And, of course, Meghan will not want to put herself through the public humiliation, actually, of being roundly booed. Dan, do you think Harry will still get booed?
I actually don't. I don't, because I think he's going to only be there for a short moment. He's not going to be part of any of the official celebrations. He's not going to be on the balcony or anything like that. I think he has decided that in order to avoid the public indignity of a booing, he's going to have to make sure that there's no sort of stunts, no sort of walkabout. He's going to be in and out very quickly. King Charles will be happy with this decision, though. He wanted his son to be there. You do have to feel sorry for the king, don't you? Most important day of his life, his two grandchildren, who he barely knows, won't be there on the big day. And I think it very much signifies this idea that Archie and Lilibet are really being raised as Californian kids.
Yeah, Californian kids, and goodness only knows what they're being told about their grandparents as well. I've had emails in, Dan, saying the kids will never forgive Harry when they're old enough to realise that they were invited to a coronation and weren't able to attend. What a birthday present. Omid Scobie's line about, oh, it's all because of Archie's birthday. Absolute rubbish. If it was my 4th birthday and someone gave me the chance to attend a king's coronation, I'd have absolutely jumped at the chance. It would have been the best birthday present in the world, Dan. So complete and utter tosh what they're saying there. I mean, but has King Charles... Oh, go on, Dan. You take it away.
I was just going to say, you're completely right. They are depriving these two children to be part of history. Yeah. It's actually quite sick in a way, but it's not at all surprising from Harry and me.
And just lastly, Dan, King Charles played a blinder in all of this, do you think?
Well, personally, I think he should have torn the invitation up. I don't think Harry should be there. So personally, I think not. But what you have to understand is that there's a real difference between Charles and William on this. William is utterly furious. He thinks his brother has been treacherous. He thinks his brother has betrayed the royal family and that he shouldn't be at these events, full stop. But Charles, he's actually a big softie. And when you read Prince Harry's book in full, you actually realize Charles has been a pretty good dad in tough circumstances. And so he still holds out this forlorn hope that Harry is going to run back into his arms and will be a good son. I would say, Patrick, that only happens the moment that Harry is dumped.
Yep, I could not agree more. Dan, just a quick one. Look, you're on tonight. Yep, 9 till 11. What's on?
Yeah, well, we've got big reaction to this story. Actually, Paul Burrell is going to be with me. He is Princess Diana's rock. He's got very strong words on this. Plus, we'll get the first reaction from the brilliant royal historian David Starkey too.
Magnificent. Dan Wootton there, the legend himself, GB News presenter. Get yourselves locked in. Popcorn at the ready, 9 p.m. Dan will guide you through the evening. Fantastic. Right, OK, well, moving on now. It was a real blink and you'll miss it case earlier on because Joe Biden only arrived in Northern Ireland late last night, but he's already left. He was greeted by Rishi Sunak and Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Chris Heaton-Harris, and the US President met the Prime Minister for bilateral talks earlier today, briefly over a latte. And Rishi Sunak says they spoke about the incredible economic opportunities for Northern Ireland and insisted they were very close partners. Well, President Biden then made a speech at the University of Ulster where he called for the return of power sharing to Northern Ireland. He also backed the Windsor Framework and promised big US investment is on the way. He told the audience that protecting peace in Northern Ireland is an issue that brings America together. Well, after leaving the university, Biden headed back to RAF Aldergrove in a large motorcade, which viewers will be able to see on their screens now. Biden is now in the Republic of Ireland. He was greeted at Dublin Airport by Taoiseach Leo Varadkar. And there we go, there's some footage there of him coming down the steps as he met Leo Varadkar. So, yes, like I've said, he's in the Republic of Ireland now, where he'll be spending a couple of days and visiting his ancestral home. Now, in a little bit, I'm going to be talking to Nigel Farage on this, so keep your eyes and ears peeled, because Nigel's got some strong views as to whether or not Joe Biden actually hates the UK. Was it just a bit of a two fingers up to us that he kind of briefly met Rishi Sunak? He's not going to be coming to the Coronation, is he? And Arlene Foster, former leader of the DUP, also of this parish, Arlene is, isn't she? She was very strong. She said that he hates the UK. I'm going to get Nigel's reaction on this very shortly. But let's go to the junior doctors' strike now, which is well into its second day, and the BMA has revoked its permission for doctors to leave the picket line and work at the hospital in Somerset. So GBNews viewers can see pictures of striking workers outside Western General Hospital earlier today. Now, hospital bosses asked for doctors, begged them to return to work for a limited time to maintain safe patient care. So to keep patients safe, they said, please get off these picket lines, put your little sides down, come in and help save people's lives. But yesterday, the BMA said 7 junior doctors could go and help in the hospital's emergency department. They since revoked that. So they said, no, we're not going to help. A BMA statement today said, we have revoked the derogation granted to Western General Hospital. It has become apparent that both the BMA and NHS England were misled over the level of staffing cover. Either local management were unaware they had sufficient senior cover, keyword there, senior cover, or they deliberately misled us. We will be asking NHS England to explore any potential probity issues. We granted a derogation in good faith, and it is incredibly disappointing to see this abused in this way. We are grateful to our consultant and SAS, which is a speciality, colleagues, for their hard work providing cover during the strike. So there we go. But get a load of this. With this being one of the biggest strikes in NHS history, millions of patients potentially suffering as a result, people potentially dying as a result, NHS waiting lists going up by the second, you would expect the leader of the Junior Doctors Union to be either on the picket line or locked in talks with ministers to negotiate a deal. Right? You would, wouldn't you? But no. Dr. Rob Lawrenson, co-chairman of the BMA Junior Doctors Committee, has gone on holiday. He's abroad somewhere, is he? So where is he? Is he on a beach near you, do you think? I mean, good grief. Maybe he's in Cairo visiting the Great Pyramids of Giza. Maybe he's sunning himself on a Caribbean beach, quaffing a pina colada. What about Disneyland? Oh, it's a popular holiday destination, isn't it, around this time of year? Is he meeting Mickey Mouse? The Colosseum is quite fun too, after all. He seems up for a gladiatorial fight, even if he doesn't want to stand shoulder to shoulder with the colleagues. And then there's always Down Under. Ayers Rock is a huge draw for those who just want to get away from it all. Just get away from it all. Now, look, if you have seen him, please get in touch. I want to know where this guy is, because misery is being wreaked out to patients left, right and centre right across the country, and this guy potentially sunning it up. A spokesperson for the British Medical Association told us Dr. Lawrenson is off work this week, fulfilling a long-standing commitment to attend the wedding of a family friend. We aren't going to disclose further personal information, but he remains actively involved in the planning of the dispute. Oh, well, I mean, good grief. I am sorry, but doesn't this just sum it up? He's got people who are disrupting patients' lives. People are potentially dying as a result of this, right? And he's abroad. Has anyone else thought as well? So he'll be on annual leave, one would imagine. That's annual leave, which is probably paid. But the people that he's telling to go out and strike are probably missing a work day, aren't they? So they might not get paid for that. Do you see what's happening here? Yeah, not a great look. Oh, Dr. Lawrenson. Anyway, right. I am launching an appeal this afternoon, right here on GB News. Have you seen Dr. Robert Lawrenson? Email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk. If you see that guy on a beach, OK, send the picture in to me. I want to see him. I want to find out where he is. I think he's an absolute... Anyway. Home Secretary Suella Braverman has been accused of using racist rhetoric by a Tory peer. Lady Varsi, the first Asian person to chair the party, criticised the Home Secretary for singling out British Pakistani men in relation to child sexual abuse cases. Lady Varsi claimed Conservatives cannot use the pigment of their skin as a defence mechanism to say they are not racist, adding brown people can be racist too. So she's basically called the Home Secretary a racist. Joining me now to discuss this further is GB News investigative reporter. It's Charlie Peters. Charlie, thank you very much. Now, initially, I had a little theory as to why Baroness Varsi might have come out against Suella Braverman. You've got a different one, and as I understand it, you think that this is just to continue a cover-up, is it?
Well, I think the use of the language that she's delivered has been very careful. She said that, well, she was very strong. She said that she thought the Home Secretary was racist. She referred to language with regards to channel migrants, and then she referred to kind of language used over the weekend, referring to, obviously, her announcements on the grooming gang scandal, the government's new plans to clamp down on the scandal after the GB News campaigning. Now, this follows comments by the NSPCC, the child safeguarding charity, who received actually £600,000 from the government as a part of these new claims. They said that singling out one race was unhelpful. Tracy Brabin, the West Yorkshire mayor, said that it was dog whistle politics. And Nazir Afzal, the chief prosecutor for the Rochdale grooming gang scandal, said that her language was dangerous. Now, the Baroness has gone one step further with this term racist. And yes, I think this is very unhelpful indeed. I think that statistically what the Home Secretary said was correct, and the work of GB News has actually gone some way to help support that. Now, detractors of the Home Secretary say that the 2020 Home Office review into group localised child sexual exploitation, they often claim that it showed that majority white men were to blame. It doesn't actually show that, and many of her detractors are relying on that. Instead, it found that 30% of grooming gang abusers were white versus 28% Asian. That's not saying most, it's saying most common. Now, the problem that the Home Office report had is that it was relying on insufficient data. A lot of constabularies hadn't filled out ethnicity data, and that's why the government is now launching more of a requirement on ethnicity data to be captured. And also, there's not enough government research or academic research to support those claims. Now, more recently, data has shown that British Pakistanis are vastly overrepresented in this kind of abuse, and that's what the Home Secretary was referring to.
Yeah, indeed. And I think, look, for people like myself looking at this now, it was a bit of a bang my head against the desk moment, because for so long people were so afraid of being called racist that people were burying their heads in the sand with all of this. And that has been evidenced in various different inquiries. South Yorkshire Police, for example, as well, saying, look, we were scared of the racial backlash, stoking racial tensions, that horrendous phrase that has, frankly, allowed stuff like this to continue. And when I hear people like Baroness Varsi talking about this and saying, well, you know, this is essentially racist language, I kind of look at it and go, here we go again. Are we just kicking the can down the road again?
Absolutely. And, you know, when I spoke to the Home Secretary last week in Rochdale, when she announced these plans, she led with, it's not racist to tell the truth. And that's the really important thing here, that for so long, I think so many investigations, the police, the local authorities, failed to assess the truth and to properly investigate it due to those fears of racism. Now, we know in Telford, for example, that the Asian population in 2011 was just 4.7%, and they were vastly overrepresented in the abuse. In Rotherham, 2 to 3% of the population, and they were vastly overrepresented in the abuse. So clearly this is a problem. And the vast majority of the British Pakistani community are vulnerable, decent, law-abiding people. But unless we pursue this issue and its background and its origins, then we won't deal with it.
There's a difference, isn't there? A massive difference between discussing things in the round and being banned from discussing them at all for fear of being called a racist. Look, Charlie, thank you very, very much. Charlie Peters there. GB News investigative reporter. And by the way, I would also highly recommend going online, just typing in Charlie Peters GB News, and you'll see some stellar stuff that this guy's producing for us. So thank you very, very much. Now, we reached out to the Home Office. They sent the following statement. Strong stuff, this, actually. The Home Secretary has been clear that all despicable child abusers must be brought to justice, and she will not shy away from telling hard truths, particularly when it comes to the grooming of young women and girls in Britain's towns who have been failed by authorities over decades. As the Home Secretary has said, the vast majority of British Pakistanis are law-abiding, upstanding citizens, but independent reports were unequivocal that in towns like Rochdale, Rotherham and Telford, cultural sensitivities have meant thousands of young girls were abused under the noses of councils and police. There you go. OK, now, Arlene Foster says that Joe Biden hates the UK. Is she right? Nigel Farage is about to give his verdict right here on this show. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News. We are Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway, Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, very shortly, Nigel Farage, the man himself, is going to be joining me live on this show to give his opinion as to whether or not the President of the United States, Joe Biden, actually hates the UK. Arlene Foster, former leader of the DUP, of course, presenter on this channel, came out very strongly and said that she thinks he does hate the UK. Joe Biden's been dishing it out quite a lot, hasn't he, about the idea that, oh, he's Irish, of course. Yes, I mean, I think pretty much everyone's Irish in America if you go back to the great-great-great-great-great-grandfathers, but there we are. I believe that Nigel joins me now. Nigel Farage is here, live and ready to go. Nigel, good stuff. Does Joe Biden hate the UK?
Do you know, Patrick, hate is a very strong word, and I think probably overused. Does he dislike the UK? Very clearly. Is he prejudiced against the UK? Yeah, without any shadow of a doubt. Does he dislike the colour orange? Did he refuse to answer a BBC question by saying, I'm Irish? Yes, all of that's true. He, of course, also, importantly, is a globalist, which means that, you know, leaving the European Union he views as being a complete and utter disaster. But hate, maybe a bit too strong.
Do you think that it is actually quite disappointing, Nigel, that he spent a few hours in Northern Ireland, most of which he was asleep, playing up to the old Sleepy Joe line there, really, and most of which he was asleep. A little coffee with our Prime Minister. I mean, I think that is actually quite disrespectful, Nigel, is it not?
To a degree it is, yes, but of course he's using this trip really for election purposes, as previous American presidents have done. Although it's funny, you know, with this Irish diaspora in America, a lot of them actually come from the Protestant Northern Irish tradition, not all from the Catholic South, but that seems to have been forgotten. Look, his trip was cursory, to say the best, mildly disrespectful, but in his favour, I will say this, he didn't say anything stupid today. He didn't say anything provocative today, other than, of course, backing Rishi Sunak's Windsor framework, saying that it dealt with the technical difficulties of Brexit, which it does not. But you could lay more of the blame on that, on the Prime Minister, than you can on Joe Biden. The special relationship is effectively, it's in the fridge at this moment in time. But we'll get a new president in 2024, and then things can get a lot closer.
OK, Nigel, thank you. Now, look, you're going to be live later this evening. What have you got for us, Nigel?
Well, I want to talk in big, broad terms about that special relationship. Does it really exist? How much does it matter? Is it a myth? And I actually think it's really important to us through NATO, through trade, and also through culture. So that's going to be my big debate this evening.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Nigel, thank you very, very much. Nigel Farage will be on your screens.
Thank you.
Later on this evening, of course, 8 till 9. Right, 7 till 8, I should say. Gosh, I should know that, shouldn't I, really? I'm here every day. Anyway, look, thank you very much, everybody who's been getting in touch. GBviews at gbnews.uk. I've just got time for a couple of emails very quickly. Patrick, the only reason why Harry's coming is the threat of losing their titles, and he needs the money. That's from Sue. There's loads more of this as well. I was hoping that Megan would come so I could tell her what I really think of her. That's from Mike. It's probably a good job that you did, Mike. You'd land yourself in a lot of trouble by doing that. But yes, now, loads coming in the next half hour of this show, including this unusual story. I want your views on this. 19-year-old Joshua Del Bono is now facing life in prison for murder, and he was caught after being shopped to the police by his own mum. I want to know whether or not you would grass your own kid up to the police if they committed a crime. Would you? I'm not sure I would, and I think that might make me a bad person, but I'm just not sure I would. And we already knew, didn't we, that we were training Ukrainian troops in the UK, but our elite British Special Forces on the ground in Ukraine. Right now, though, I've got your news headlines with the wonderful Polly Middlehurst.
Patrick, thank you. And the top stories this hour on GB News. The leader of the DUP, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, says the US President Joe Biden's visit to Northern Ireland doesn't change the political dynamic in the region. The Unionist Party has boycotted power sharing for more than a year over post-Brexit trade. After meeting with the Prime Minister in Belfast, the President gave a speech at Ulster University highlighting the significance of the Good Friday Agreement, and he praised the Windsor framework, saying it addressed the practical realities of Brexit. Mr Biden has now arrived in Dublin to begin a 3-day visit to the Republic of Ireland.
Sometimes, especially when the distance of history, we forget how hard-earned, how astounding that peace was at the moment. It shifted the political gravity in our world. There were no guarantees that the deal on paper would hold, no guarantees that it would be able to deliver the progress we celebrate today. It took long, hard years of work to get to this place. It took a people willing to come together in good faith and to risk boldly for the future.
In other news today, the BMA has formally asked the government to enter talks facilitated, by the conciliation service ACAS to help end the junior doctors' pay dispute. It comes after thousands of junior doctors in England walked out for the second of 4 days of industrial action. Downing Street has refused to negotiate unless the British Medical Association abandons demands for a 35% pay rise and calls off the strikes.
Some breaking news in the last hour. The former BBC Radio 1 DJ Tim Westwood has been interviewed twice under caution, we understand, for 5 alleged sex offences between 1982 and 2016. The Metropolitan Police says it interviewed a 65-year-old man on March the 15th and April the 4th this year. There's been no arrest. Last year, a statement from a representative of Tim Westwood said he strongly denied all allegations. And it's been confirmed the Duchess of Sussex won't be attending the coronation of King Charles in May, but the Duke of Sussex, Harry, will. In a statement, the palace said Meghan Markle will remain in California with their children, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. The announcement follows weeks of speculation following the publication of Prince Harry's autobiography, Spare. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
So the pound today will buy you $1.2479 and 1.1351 euros. The price of gold, if you fancy an ounce, is £1,609.65, and the FTSE closing today at 7,824.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
Here's a question for you. Would you shop your son or daughter to the police if you knew they'd committed a crime? I ask because a teenager in Somerset has been convicted for murder after his mum called the police to inform them about what he'd done. 19-year-old Joshua Del Bono was yesterday given a life sentence at Bristol Crown Court. He will spend a minimum of 21 years behind bars after a jury found him unanimously guilty. He had killed 16-year-old Charlie Bates in July last year. Now, the stabbing was over a £20 debt and happened in a public car park in Radstock in Somerset. Del Bono fled the scene, disposed of the knife and burned his clothes. But around 6 hours after the murder, his own mother called the police to tell them about what her son had done and said she was keeping him at her address. I've got a recording for you now of that 999 call. Let's play it.
Police emergency, what's your location?
Hi, I'm in Froome.
Okay, what's happening?
My son's killed someone.
Okay, all right, okay. Can you tell me where?
It was at Radstock earlier. He's just come back. I've just found out he's in my house now, but I can't let him go anywhere.
Does he know you're on the phone?
Yeah, he's here. I've told him I've got to do it.
Wow. Could you do that? I'm already getting emails in about this saying it's morally the right thing to do. John's been honest, it's morally the right thing to do. Must have taken a lot of guts. If I'm being completely honest with you, and I think maybe this makes me a bad person, I don't think I could do that if it was my child. With me now is psychologist Emma Kenny. Emma, this is a really, really tough one. I mean, what do you make of it? What's your view? Do you think that, you know, psychologically this woman must be absolutely devastated that she was put in a position where she's basically shopped her kid to the police?
Yeah, I mean, what you go through there is a whole raft of emotions because, first of all, he's going to get caught. The likelihood is he'll have described what happened and she'll understand that he's going to be essentially arrested. So, secondly, she doesn't want him to run off because that could put his life in danger. When people have done things like this and they know that their time is coming, their life can be at risk because of the way they feel about their own mortality. So it's a difficult dichotomy. But it's going to end up the same result, which is he's going to be arrested. And her acting this way is a direct message to him about accountability and responsibility. And I totally hear what you say when you say, at the end of the day, I don't know if I could do it. But that's because you've not been in that situation. Yeah. You're a loving parent. You'd want to bring the pigs and the lime and the shovel because in your head, that's what you imagine you'd do. But the consequences are you'd know that the kid was going to get caught and you can actually help them a great deal by helping them to take that accountability. And it's a shame, really, that he didn't follow through and take accountability. That's why he's got a minimum 21 years, because he didn't go guilty. And
It's
that would
a really
be a
good
third
point.
of the sentence.
It's a really good point, that, Emma, because, look, his mum's shopped him. That must have been so difficult. I think, have hit the nail on the head there, saying she was probably trying to do him a favour in a roundabout way. He could have gone there, pled guilty, and just gone, look at this. He's trying to get out of it. So clearly that lesson has not been learnt by him, and he's going to have 21 years as a minimum to learn it. Just tell me, though, as a, for this mother, if she'd have kept that to herself, I mean, her life arguably wouldn't have been worth living, really, just dealing with this constant daily thing of, I know what my son's done, even if he didn't get caught,
We see some very heinous parents who don't actually make their children take responsibility. And that's the reason a lot of the time their children are the way they are. We've seen this in lots of areas, for example, of Liverpool and Manchester, where essentially crime parents really don't care about what their kids have done and actually defend them to the point where they essentially allow behaviour that is totally out of control. So I have a complete empathy with this mother who genuinely has probably done all she could, and her child has still made a horrible decision, and the consequences are that morally and ethically she couldn't have lived with that. At the same time, I think you've got to be very careful and clear when it comes down to a criminal situation. If she's aware that he has carried this crime out, and I imagine that he told her, then she becomes a person who is also criminally liable. So it's really essential that people realise that if you know about information and you don't then tell the police, you essentially are a co-conspirator to that particular crime on a lesser level. But she did the right thing on every level, both on a personal level for herself and certainly on an ethically and moralistic level. But at the same time, gosh, no parent who's
shocker.
Good and decent wants to be in a situation.
Yeah, absolute shocker. And Lynn's been on. Lynn says, look, Patrick, what if it was your son who'd been stabbed to death? You would want to know who'd done it. You're absolutely right. And, like you said there, Emma, the only reason I'm sitting here saying I just don't know if I could have done it, would I have helped, burn the clothes, would I have helped do all of this, is because I haven't been put in that situation. And I think maybe the first thought is to try to protect your kid, and then you start thinking about all of the damage that their actions have done, don't you? And it builds from there. But you do get some heinous parents, you were saying, Emma, do you? You do get some people who will just protect their kids at all costs.
Oh, absolutely. You get horrific parents who often are crime-related themselves and seem to believe that there is a code where criminal behaviour is concerned. They really don't care about the collateral damage. We've seen that with the death of Olivia in Liverpool recently, where that little 9-year-old girl was shot and essentially the whole family were on the side of the killer. And actually a lot of the crime community were too. So to some degree, there are these individuals that create the typology of child that we're talking about. And then there are kids like this who made a horrible decision, and likely-wise, if they hadn't been in that sliding doors moment, there would be a very different outcome. But for that mother, she's also got a 21-year sentence now, and that's really challenging for her. Got all that empathy. And you're right. Your feeling is, I'll do anything to protect my child. I'll kill to protect my child. But when they've killed another child, it changes.
This is it. Look, Emma, thank you very, very much, and really great to get your insight there. Fascinating story for all the wrong reasons, but it's got a lot of people talking. Emma Kenny, thank you very, very much, psychologist there. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got some breaking news to bring to you now. A teenager has been charged with manslaughter following the deaths of 4 people trying to cross the English Channel in a small boat last year. 19-year-old Ibrahim Abbar has been charged in connection with the deaths, which happened as 39 people were rescued on December the 14th. Barr has previously been charged with people smuggling offences and is set to appear at Folkestone Magistrates Court tomorrow to face the manslaughter charges. So that's the breaking news there now for you. Teenager charged with manslaughter. Right, moving on. Leaked top-secret documents suggest that the UK has special forces operating in Ukraine. This is potentially very, very big news. Could it escalate things? We'll find out. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities.
especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss? Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back. Now, the UK has up to 50 Special Forces troops operating in Ukraine, according to a series of top-secret US documents which were leaked online. The files also mention the deployment of US and French Special Forces in Ukraine. In response to the leak, a Ministry of Defence spokesperson said this: readers should be cautious about taking at face value allegations that have the potential to spread disinformation. So they're very clear about all of that. Joining me now is former advisor to the Ministry of Defence, NATO and the UN. It's Gwithian Prince. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask you a question now about do you think we should even be talking about this?
Patrick, this is the most important question you've had on your programme by about 1,000 miles today. It leaves everything else in the dust. Yes, we should be talking about it. Of course we should, because this story links with two other stories that you've covered in the last 30 minutes as I've been watching your program. One, the story about whether we are a hyper-racist country where we have a uniquely awful colonial past and we should feel embarrassed and hateful about everything we do. And the other, the story you just discussed with Nigel Farage about whether Mr. Biden hates the United Kingdom. Why? Because all of these can be, as that MOD quote suggested, they can be aspects of the disinformation war in the grey war, the world war, that we are now engaged in with the Russians, with the Chinese. Because as the Russians do worse on the battlefield, so they ramp up their cyber information warfare and their information warfare. And so we come to the literally $60 million question, which is, are these documents likely to be realistic or are they likely to be fakes? And frankly, whichever way we answer that, it's a very important story, as I'll explain in a moment, if you like.
Yeah, please just carry on, actually. I'd bow to your vastly superior intellect in this. Just take it away, yeah.
Okay, right, well, fine. Let me explain. If this is correct, then these are the most serious leaks of Western intelligence that have happened, really in a generation. They're much more important than the leaks that came from Edward Snowden, because they, if they're true, come from much higher level. They are also much, much closer to the moment of their creation. Now, if that's so, then it has a potential to disrupt everything about the Ukrainian plans for their offensive. It also tells an enormous amount, if it's true, about the human intelligence and the technical intelligence resources of the free world. On the other hand, if it's not true, then it's a strong indication of how much the Russians are now going to have to rely on their non-physical means of warfare in order to attack us. And that, my first remark relates to this, that goes across the whole spectrum, because people must join up the dots. All of this stuff which we are relentlessly bombarded with about how uniquely awful this country is, how we have nothing to be proud about, this is all part of an attempt at moral disarmament. Now, many of the people who say it may actually believe it, but they are useful fools for our enemies like Putin and Xi Jinping, who wish us to be a country which is disunited, fractious, and the same thing applies to the behavior that you just saw of old Mr. Biden wandering around in Belfast, muttering about his Irish past, and the question of whether or not he hates this country. Fundamentally important because, of course, as Nigel's going to discuss in his program this evening, our most important single relationship, not just militarily but culturally, is with the United States. That's what keeps the whole free world free. So what do we actually know? Well, the story actually, Patrick, is quite strange. These documents first surfaced on the 4th of March on a website called Discord, which is a gaming messaging site for people who play things like Minecraft. And they turned up as photographs of paper documents. The next day, they were picked up by a website called Donbass Devushka on Telegram, that is from separatists, Russian-favoring separatists in Ukraine. And pretty soon thereafter, we have the BBC's Paul Adams, defense correspondent, saying that the DoD is confirming that they're genuine, and the Ukrainian DoD is suggesting strongly that they're fake. Some of them, most certainly, we know from the authoritative investigative organization Bellingcat, some of them have clearly been crudely manipulated. But therefore, my view is that we should be extremely careful, as the MOD said, we should be extremely careful about taking anything like this at face value. Because clearly, what would Mr. Putin most want to get everybody to believe? It is that NATO is already engaged in a covert way with some of our most effective elite forces in fighting him. Obviously, he would like that be stated as fact. We cannot state that as fact on the basis of what we see so far. But if they are fake, that's also really important because it suggests the degree to which the Russians in this war, in which Ukrainians are fighting on the ground for us, let's nobody have any mistake about this, in which the Ukrainians are actually doing a lot better than the Russians would have wanted them to.
Well, I absolutely. Look, Wootton, thank you very, very much. And to be honest with you, I could have just put my feet up there and let you carry on because I was glued to every word of that. So much appreciated. Thank you, Wootton Prince there, who is the former advisor to the Ministry of Defence, NATO and the UN. And that is providing, I think, some much-needed context on these so-called leaks about British troops, well, allegedly anyway, already fighting in Ukraine, which will be a gift for Putin. We are, I believe, very shortly, potentially anyway, going to show you some footage of President Joe Biden and the latest leg of his trip. But before that, Jubes is here, Michelle Jubry. In fact, you'll be on the air in a minute. Oh, well, there we go. We're going live now to Joe Biden. Sorry, Michelle. This is President Joe Biden, who is in the Republic of Ireland. And that's the beast there. Crowds greeting him either side of the street as President Biden continues his Irish tour. He left Northern Ireland, where he spent, well, a few hours anyway. He is heading to County Louth, and he is expected to visit King John's Castle in Carlingford. And that's what he will be doing in just a matter of moments as the motorcade passes through and the people of the Republic of Ireland there Very happy to see him. And Michelle, I'm just going to bring you in here.
Wondering when I watch these scenes is what on earth have those parents done to make those children so well behaved? Because if you're listening and not watching, so you can't see the screen, you're watching, it's pouring down with rain, it's torrential rain, and then you've got scores of people, kids standing patiently waiting to catch a glimpse. Mine had been mucking around no end.
They've been mucking around no end. Well, there you go. Look,
Parenting tips needed for me, I think.
I'll see you tomorrow at 3 p.m.
Hello there, welcome to your Wednesday weather update. I'm Claire Nazir. Now, the French Met Service have named Storm Noah. Currently, though, it's across the UK with some impact, particularly across the southwest and the south coast of England. So this is the area of low pressure, a squeeze on the isobars. So severe gales through this afternoon and into evening time across the southwest. Gales along the Channel coast with some high waves. Now, through this afternoon and evening time, still a swathe of wet weather, heavy at times, extending right across the country. And those winds really will pack a punch across more southern areas. But through the early hours of the morning, a quieter spell of weather across Wales, central southern England, down towards the southeast. Showery rain continues, though, anywhere from northern England, Northern Ireland and northwards and towards the far southwest. To start the day on Thursday, yes, you'll see a few showers with a fresh wind here. So Thursday morning starts right across this southern portion of the country. Always more cloud across more northern areas, showery bursts of rain, particularly for southern Scotland, northern England, where there could be some hail and a few showers running in across Northern Ireland. Brighter towards the far north, some brighter and dry weather moving in across the south and southwest through the latter part of the day, and temperatures will be up a notch, feeling fairly pleasant in any sunshine. Through Thursday evening then, that showery rain continues, although it will disintegrate into few showers as the cloud thickens from the southwest, bringing yet again some rain towards the West Country through the early hours.